Call special meeting in order. Burgess.
Here.
Morton. Myers.
Here.
Hoskins.
Here.
Washington. Here. Williams. Here.
All right, vote to item number 2, 2014-2015 budget hearing. Before we get into this, I'd just like to let everyone know, in case you don't know, that Trustee Borden's mother-in-law has passed away. And tonight they are having the visitation services and the funeral. So he informed me he's unable to make it. And I told him, I said, you know what, South Road will still be here tomorrow. That family comes first. So he's very into his job, trying to make sure he does the right thing. So at a time like this, we need to make sure our family's, his wife is grieving right now. So if you want to keep the Morgan family in your prayers, during this time of loss. So we'll move to 2014-2015 budget hearing. Before we go to other participation, we'll go on the board. Anything that we discussed? Trustee Burrow.
Yes. As I stated before, and I did do my research as far as how much we paid last year for the professional services and this year. And then also, I didn't see in the budget anything we were going to do about the age report. That's money that we still owe out. I didn't see anything how we going to, because we got to pay that. I mean, we pay it ongoing, but there still has to be something there. Because if we balance the budget, that means everything has been paid, so we have to pay that. Quite actually, that's unpaid, that's unbalanced. So I just wanted to bring that up. First thing, we haven't finished paying all the lawyer fees for the year. And with that included, I went down line by line. I went over it. I was able to take a stab at it and go over some of the things that we didn't put in there. And I'll just start at the top. The amount that we still owe for unpaid is $812,000. That's from the professional services that we still owe for that amount. The police pension fund, quite naturally, we know we owe that. That's something we've owed for years, but there's nothing there that says, we're going to pay $194,000, but that came out only because it was levied. After that levy is over with, what are we going to do? How are we going to pay that? Because $194,000 that is in the budget for that came from that levy. The pension, for the fire pension, there's nothing in there that stated $101,000 every year. I can go all the way down the line, but
Can you make copies for them?
no, I didn't because these are some of the things that I just got through finishing up today. It took me a while to get all these things together. It's a lot of pages. However, I can go through a summary.
I think we need to, first of all, you should have reports for the board to review. Second of all, when you start talking about the amounts of professional services.
Yes. No, professional services. Yes, professional services. Yes.
$800,000.
Yes.
How many of those right now are coming under litigation? How many of those are covered by insurance? Because remember, South Road only has $50,000 self-insured.
I got this from this. I'll give you an example. Robinson Engineering, we already paid them $24,000. We still owe them $21,000.
Okay.
Back to the Woodland, we still owe $1,500. Down Craig, $1,700. Came to Kenneth, $7,000. But Craig did meet at $19,000.
That's the current lawsuit, which is being covered by insurance.
Okay.
So you have to.
But we still owe them.
No.
We got to pay them.
No, we don't. Because we've already hit our $50,000 cap on lawsuits.
Okay.
So what they're asking is they stay open until these are settled in court. And then when they end up getting settled in court, the insurance companies will look at, have you met your $50,000 self-insured payment? Yes or no? If we have, they pick up their remainder, the insurance company. So there's things in there that's open still, just like some of our, I think probably, MAC is probably in there for quite a few. That is the professional services who's doing our work.
So I came
So that is part of the $4.8 million that we paid out. We don't pay them, but we know that before the job's over, because of the agreement we have with the IEP, Attorney General, they had already broke down how much each, if you want to call it professional services, will get paid. That Robinson Engineering get paid so much of that $4.8 million, the contractor will get paid so much. So that's all included inside this budget. So when you look at, you need to make sure that you have all the information.
This is the information I got from Mohan as far as what we owe. Olson and Sturgis, we still owe them $253.
Correct.
And that's not in there. And that would be a total for this year alone, just Olson and Sturgis, $598,000. Now, next year, we're gonna budget $550 for all professional services. And we paid them just this amount by themselves, so we still owe that. And these are just some of the things. We do have an agent report that we still owe money. Also, I didn't see anything in there to kind of pay that also. There's nothing in the budget that says, okay, we're going to pay all the things that sit on the back desk or whatever you want to call it. We used to do that years ago. We used to pay so much, and I think Mohan still does. We pay so much, but if we go by the budget that we have, there's no money to pay that. Money to pay ongoing things that we're going to move forward with right now. You did that, but these are bills that we owe now. Okay, so you said Robinson Engineering, but I'm still looking at a large discrepancy of where that money going to come from. We can't say grant money for that because grant money is grant money.
But remember, we're already, 2 months into this budget? So
Okay.
you're looking at money that's already been part of this budget that's been budgeted. So when you say Robinson Engineering loan 20,000, we're already 2 months into this budget. So you figure out to find out, again, information you're missing. You have to find out how much is due during these first 2 months of this budget, which haven't passed yet, to pay them. Again, you got a lot of numbers, and of course, the
No,
board,
I got
the board
things that
doesn't have, the board doesn't have what you're.
You yourself told me when I asked the question, I'm a trustee, I should already know. I went out and got these numbers. This is the agent report here, it's available to anybody. On the agent report by itself, just the agent what we owe right now. And this is, you said it's available to everybody. What we owe right now is $455,000. That's just for bills that we owe all the way back from 2013, a couple of 2012.
And how many of those are attorney fees that are on litigation?
No, very, very, very few. As a matter of fact, you got Brickman, you have Comcast Cable, we have, these are the larger ones. I don't know who Allen Mack and Sons are. We owe them a lot of money.
Hang on. Allen Mack and Sons is the contractor who's doing the IEPA fixes to, that's part of the IEPA. And let's talk about it. That is work that they will get paid when it's complete.
Okay, we have Heritage, 12,000. We have, there's a lot of things on here, that we have. Minor Electric, I'm just looking at the big ones, Robinson Schwartz, attorneys. Rowan.
In fact, attorneys.
Rowan, I think that's the,
It's the lobbyist.
lobbyists, that's 9,000. There's a lot of things that we've never addressed. This is what I'm saying. We still owe $455,000. And there's nothing in this budget that addresses how we're going to pay that. That's all. That was my question. But
Out of those, I guess what my concern is that two things. Number one, if you're saying that we owe $450,000, I guess my question would then be, how much of that is stuff that's not going to come out of the general fund?
correct.
Because of the lawsuits, because of IDPA stuff, blah, blah, blah. So that would be an interesting contrast to see what the actual finite number is. And I guess my next follow-up question whatever that resulting number is, what Trustee Burgess, what are we accomplishing? By bringing this up, I guess. Like, are we planning on adjusting the budget? Do you want to review the budget again? Because I'm going to throw a number out. Minus all those different things, if the finite number is $200,000, then are you suggesting that we re-look at the budget and slash $200,000?
I'm suggesting that we have to do something to pay that 200,000, that number that you, the arbitrary number that you said. I'm suggesting that there should be something in this budget stating that we're gonna pay so much on the aging report. This is the aging report, we're gonna pay so much, because we're gonna get new bills started like 2 months ago, as the mayor just stated. But these still need to be paid. These are bills that we have day to day. Yes, some of this is lawyer fees. Yes, it is. But still, even if it is lawyer fees, we still have to pay the lawyer fees. I'm not talking about litigation. I'm talking about lawyer fees. Now, no, I didn't get the complete breakdown how much of those lawyer fees are adjudication and litigation and things like that. No, I'm just looking at how much we owe an entity. Where in the budget does it say that we're going to pay? The budget states that we're going to pay the bills that are going to come to us for this fiscal year.
Okay, hang on, Ron, you're fine.
The outstanding accounts payable is based upon the last fiscal year. Last fiscal year, we budgeted for the balance budget, but unfortunately, because of the unpaid balances that have been carried over from year to year to year, that have been accumulated. Therefore, most of the expenditures have been already accounted for, and the money that needs to be paid out for the accounts payable either has to come from other sources of income. Most of the legal fees that is covered by the insurance, even the insurance will reimburse us for 50,000, leaving 50,000 and above, we will get all the reimbursement from the insurance companies. The remainder of the balance is the responsibility of the village, and the village has to pay. There is no choice.
Right. But you just stated that the money that this is what I'm talking about, is already in the budget. That's what you just said. I didn't see that. I don't see anywhere in the budget that we're going to pay Brickman, and we're going to pay the other vendors that we owe. There's nothing in there. Each and every department has their budget. They have their money for vehicle repairs and things like that. That's for this. I'm looking at what we owe. We went through this before. I've done this before. The mayor has done this. Rosie has done this. There's no projection in there for this money that's owed. There's money there, yes, ongoing. That we're going to get this, we're going to pay this, we're going to pay for that. We have to have supplies, we have to have vehicle expense, we have to have payroll. Yes, there is. There's money in there. There's money was budgeted. But there's nothing stating that we're going to pay so much for a back bill for the police department money. There's nothing in there that says we're going to pay the back bills for public works or for the fire department. That has to be paid. They're going to go to those vendors. They have to have something. And if we take away from their budget now, from the budget that we just did, then guess what? They're going to be short. And when they're short, then what they're going to do, that's just my first question. And I have a few more, but if we're going to start off being short, then we're going to be short, period.
Well, I guess my question is, you say that we've all done this before, the three of us have done this before. I don't remember a line item under the police department for past budgets. So what have we done before? We reviewed the budget, we talked about, I'll give you an example. ESTA, 2 years ago, sitting at this very table, we talked about what we thought ESTA was going to be, and ESTA was so far beyond what we budgeted, so as a group, we decided to increase their budget because that didn't make sense. Why would we severely under budget them? So yeah, we've looked at numbers and we've talked, but to my knowledge, in the 9 years of budgets that I've been sitting through, I don't ever remember there being a line item in general or for a specific department that addresses past due balances. So is that what you're talking about? I'm trying to figure out what you would like to accomplish by this. Not just bring it to the attention, because that's fine.
I'm not trying to accomplish. It's not a matter of me accomplishing. It's a matter of me doing what we're supposed to do I have a budget in my desk for 2008 and 2009. It shows each and everything that has to be, there's an explanation, and there's pie charts and everything, showing what we're going to do, so much for debt service and so much for the agent. You know, there's so much that we do budget. There's something in there that states that we have, there's nothing in this budget to say that we're going to pay bills that we owe. Yes, we're going to pay bills that are going to come in, and we're looking at how much bills that are going to come in. Absolutely, that's in here. That money's in there, that we're gonna budget X amount of money for X, Y, and Z. Yes, it is. There's nothing in there that states that we're gonna pay. This is just the first thing, that we're gonna pay the money that we owe these vendors for these different departments that we use.
Okay.
That's the first thing.
But
Go
that
ahead.
being said, bringing that up is one thing. Okay, to point something out, great, perfect, wonderful. What do we do about it? What are you suggesting?
Okay,
that
the
we do?
reason I'm bringing it,
Line item?
the reason I'm bringing it up is when I got the budget, as everybody else, I don't know, I got the budget the day of, that morning of the budget hearing is when I finally got the budget. No, I didn't have a chance to go through that. I didn't have a chance to look at it. All I did was look at numbers and try to make sure that A equal B, and that was all I was trying to look at, to make sure that's everything. But then when I had a chance to go over and look at it, and look at what we owe, and then I asked the question last week about who we owe, and then I was told, you know, well, you should know. So now that I did go do some more research to find out what we owe and who we owe, now I'm going back to the budget, looking at how we're going to pay it. How can we move forward paying or start a new budget and we still owe money? At least we can say we're going to dedicate X amount of money to pay the agent report. If the agent report is going to be so much, then we should dedicate so much, because you're going to pay it. We're going to pay it sooner or later, but there should be something in there that for that reason. And
That's what you're asking.
that's what I'm saying. That there should we can't. We should.
Bringing it up isn't going to be, that's not conducive to.
I'm bringing it up, trustee, because when else can I bring it up? I mean, this is what I mean.
Again, I'm just trying to figure out what's the end here.
The end is we need to budget. Like I said before, we need to find a way to at least take a chunk out of this. And this is just this part. This is just part one of the things that I looked at. That was just one of the things. You know, I like I said, I had a chance to go through a whole lot, and that's just part one. Is that amount? The next thing I've been looking at is, you know, anticipated cost. I mean, some of these things that we have in there, yes, it is anticipated, and the mayor put down a few other things, but we have to be realistic with some of these things that we did. I mean, realistically, we can't cut a department in half and expect that to happen. We cut $100,000 off overtime for the police department, and we all know that that's not going to work, because they are down police officers, so therefore when you're down police officers, you create overtime. But to go in knowing that that's not going to happen, that they have to work within that budget, okay, fine. By December, they're going to be back here, or somebody's going to be back here saying, no, the budget is going to be exceeded. They're going to exceed their budget because you cut them almost half. Their overtime was $270 last year, now it's budgeted for $160.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about the police department, because, yes, they're lower than what they were last year, but we brought on 7 new police officers, was it the end of last year, or the previous year. Since then, we've lost three police officers. That means we are still up 4, number one. Number two, we know that we had to pay all that overtime because of officers being on probation for 6 months. So that means those officers had to not only us pay for them to go to training, which they got paid for that, to and from. We also had to pay to keep officers riding along and the overtime for the training of those officers. And we also know that we have reduced our hours on our liquor licenses. So, which meant that when we had a 4 o'clock liquor license, that we had to have our second shift officers, which ended at 11 o'clock, work over on the weekends not just at 4 o'clock, but sometimes till 6, 7 o'clock, with all overtime to be able to cover those things like that. So, there was a lot of things last year when it came to overtime in the police department. We put on additional officers on the street and stuff during the winter months. There was a lot of other things that the chief brought up as the budgetary reason it was so high last year. Again, all the departments are being challenged to reduce their overtime. Talked to Mohan and department heads. Mohan's going to make sure we run a monthly report for our department heads. We're going to be having meetings to keep track on where we're at with the budget and what they need, what areas they need to keep an eye on. Again, a lot of things we're putting in place so that it's not just, 6 months down the road or 8 months down the road, I'm on the budget. This is something that we're going to find constantly. This is no different than the corporate world. Municipality, you have to reduce your overtime, there's costs you have to reduce, and you have a break. So the department heads are being challenged again this year, they're wanting to stay within the budget, to reduce overtime, and to live within our means.
Yes, ma'am, but that all sounds great, but I'm looking at $100,000. We're gonna save $100,000 in overtime versus what we paid last year with less people. Now, that's the first thing. The second thing, and this is something I did ask at the meeting, no one was able to tell me, why are we transferring $300,000 out of the water fund into the general fund? For what reason are we doing that? I never found out.
The reason is we need to cover general fund expenses. The general fund is not like a slush fund. So we need to cover some portion of water sewer fund expenditure incurred on behalf of water sewer fund expenditure that was incurred in general fund that we have to get it reimbursed. For example, legal fees incurred by the administration department needs to be shared by water sewer fund. And
Are you anticipating legal fees this year?
In general, there is a cost sharing. We have to share the cost because it is for the benefit of the village we are incurring and general fund, whatever the legal fee is. So therefore, as an enterprise fund, they are supposed to contribute to the general fund. It's a normal pattern in almost all the villages in the state of Illinois to charge a nominal fee to the water sewer fund. It is called enterprise fund to share the cost of the general government. Therefore, we can charge some portion of the expenditure into the water fund and sewer fund and get reimbursed the cost of whatever we incur in general fund.
Okay, Mohan, that sounded real good. I didn't understand it, but my question is this. $300,000 coming from the water fund. Water fund is there to pay the water and sewer expenses and to pay public works salaries. And anything to do with that. I understand that part. We used to have to borrow so much from the water fund to pay. So therefore, my question is this what we're doing now, taking it out of here instead of having to borrow it every 3 or 4 months? Because, $300,000, we can take that and do some infrastructure repair or something like that. But we all know what happens when it goes to general fund, it gets distributed throughout the other departments. That's what general fund does. I just wanted to know why do we hit that fund, even though we have an increase. We increased the water, for a specific purpose.
Correct.
But to also now that we have a surplus or whatever, that we can draw X amount of money out of it, then it should be earmarked for a definite. Instead of just general fund.
Because unfortunately, general fund is not self-sustainable.
Absolutely. So therefore, we need to look at that. That's
Therefore, we can charge water fund, sewer fund, on a reasonable basis we can charge them and get it transferred over to the general fund to cover the cost. There is nothing absolutely principally wrong in transferring.
No, I didn't say it was wrong.
Water, sewer,
I'm not saying that's wrong. You can transfer money from department to department, but you cannot transfer, you can't
Because we don't
transfer, I
have
mean,
money
you
in
can't
general
transfer.
fund. We wish, we don't have
But
money.
we're not supposed to be able to transfer money out of the water fund in the general, because in the general fund, we pay, wages. We can't use the water fund for wages. We are,
Not for wages.
but in general fund, you know, there's nothing. Once it hits that general fund, it can be used for wages, because it's part of the general
And
fund.
definitely, because it belongs to general fund when you transfer from water sewer fund.
Okay, well, I'm just, those are, I'm not, I've got 13 pages here. I'm not gonna go through all this, but I will sit down and talk to you.
Yeah, if you.
Hopefully between now and time.
If you
But
go
it's just-
through.
But it's just a lot of things here, Mohan, that there's no money for. That we haven't paid, I mean, there's no money allocated for, I put that.
I guess I have a question, Justin.
Yes.
You're bringing up all this stuff, that you weren't part of the budget preparing, you didn't want to.
No, don't say that, Mayor. I didn't say, how can you tell me? Mayor, please, do not say I do not want to be part of that. Don't say that.
Did you ask me about?
Did you ask anybody?
I didn't ask.
No, you did not, Mayor. No, you did not. You said that you said that you were sitting down with the department heads and going through the budget. You did not say, would anybody like to join me? No, you didn't. No, you didn't. I didn't hear that.
Tell me you're done. So-
Okay, I'm done.
What I'm saying is, you come in after the budget's been out there for almost, what, 2 weeks now? The next budget, 13 pages, and with, I don't see any solutions, and you haven't brought up any solutions. You brought up questions that probably should have been answered, especially since you're a liaison from the finance department to the board.
Been dealing with Mohan each and every week. Every week I go in here.
I guess I was expecting more from the liaison to come before the board with a solution, rather than 13 pages of.
Mayor, I cannot go on the budget until you complete what you're doing. I cannot go line item by line item on anything until you complete what you're doing. You said you're meeting with the department head. When you get through meeting with the department heads and you discuss with them how much money they're gonna have, and this is what they have to live with, after that happened is when I got the budget.
So June 30th.
That's when I got the budget. I got the budget at the same time everyone else got it, I presume, on that Monday morning when the clerk, put it out there for everybody. And it took me that long to go over, yes. We didn't do it last week. This took time. It's not something I just did right away. You've been working on the budget since May. You're gonna tell me in 15 days I should have been done? You've been working on this since May because you've been asking about, you say you're still working on it since May. I get 15 days and you're telling me that I come up with this all of a sudden. No, that's not all of a sudden. This is careful thought. I thought this out. I went through different things. Yes, I'm bringing it up now. I didn't have a chance to bring it up before. I was never asked to be part of it. I've talked to Mohan about several things, about payments, about money going out. Do we have enough money? All these things I talk to him each and every week. I go and talk to him about it. You see me here. Don't say that I just now all of a sudden I did this.
What is your solution, sir?
It's gonna take you too long for me to sit here. I'll talk to Mohan. If you want, we can make an appointment to talk together.
You've got 13 pages, so you
Yes.
should have an issue and what's your solution is there. You can-
Okay, I can go over each of them.
So what's your solution?
Okay.
Let's just go with solution. That's what we're interested in.
Well, while you're looking for those solutions, I just want to make.
Looking, I can get it right now. Go ahead.
While you're flipping, 2 points. In 2009, when Lewis Powers was elected, it was presented to us, there was $500,000 in unpaid bills. Okay? But yeah, we all heard that and we did, yes. And we've been trying to make up for that ever since. So if you think about the 5 years that we've been trying to pay off that they did. We had to tell them, you have to cut your operating budgets, you have to cut your supply budgets, you have to do these things. This is something that's happening all over. You can't expect the police department or the public works department or any other department to willy-nilly cut their budget. Nobody wants to cut their budget. You have to put these guidelines in place. Do we always reach these goals? No, we don't, but that's our goal. We talked about the fact that the budget is paper, it's fluid, it's elastic. You're gonna have to amend it. You might have to change it. These are things that are happening. But we just need to be cognizant because while this was the quickest budget meeting I've ever been a part of, I'll say that, there wasn't too much conversation back and forth. There hasn't been any information until now. And I can understand that it took you, 14, 15 days or whatever to move the budget. That's fine. It's never, I guess I'm just confused because we've never gone into this much depth before. Maybe that says something about the board as a whole, but if you could go 13 pages of this budget, I hope that at least 3 of those pages talks about the other 10 that says this is what I'm going to suggest. Because if you want to put $100,000 back in the police department, where are we going to get it from? Are we not going to buy paper? Are we going to cut more public works department? Because the last time we did that, which I believe I was the only trustee that voted no for, when we cut the public works department.
No, you weren't.
Okay, you may have voted, I believe I did, but you cut personnel.
No,
That's the other way. How else are we going to get this money? You want to put back $100,000? Whatever other college for the agent. How are we going to get the money back to put into that? Are we going to cut more personnel? Are we going to cut services? What are we going to do? That's my question.
But it's interesting, the police department was brought up tonight because the police department was brought up on June the 30th. And watching the video, I remember you were questioning the chief about this $100,000. And the chief said it's challenging, but he can, thinks he can handle it. And then your last statement was, I guess you're okay with it. And then you moved on to the next subject. So this is something we've already discussed on June 30th. And you already questioned the department head if he was going to be able to achieve this. But now the department is not here, and you want to add it back into the budget. I'm curious.
I'll try to explain this very slowly. First of all, you're talking about catch-up. Just because we did something X amount of time ago doesn't mean we continue to keep doing the same thing now. That's why we're in the position. I would hope that we at some point in time put our foot down and say, okay, let's pay before we go forward. If we have to do whatever we have to do to make it happen, okay. But to budget money that we don't even have or that we know is not going to last 8 months, that doesn't make sense. Now to sit here and say that I didn't want to be, or I wasn't part, or I don't have a solution, or it took me 14 days, I still remind you. Yes, it took me 14 days to do this, but I didn't have the numbers until that particular time. You knew what you were going to do, Mayor, back in May. I cannot go to the department heads. I will not go to the department heads and ask them what they can and cannot live with. That's not my job. My job is to, when I get the numbers before me, is to make sure that we can make this happen. Right now, I don't see us making this happen for a full fiscal year for the money that we're coming in, that's coming in. Yes, you cut the $100,000, and he said he was okay with that. But then, come January or December, when we come up and then we find out that we'll be over budget, what are we going to do then?
What did we do last year when we went over budget?
We started borrowing money. That's what we had. There's no way. I didn't put any money in the budget. You didn't put any money in the budget. We didn't borrow any money last year. We didn't borrow any money last year. No, wait a minute. Wait, hold it. Back up. You said we didn't borrow any money last year. Now you're saying we paid it back. We paid what back? If we didn't borrow any money last year, then therefore we didn't have to pay anything back. We borrowed money last year from other funds. Yes, we did pay it back, but we borrowed money. If we didn't pay it back, then we didn't borrow it. If you don't borrow something, you have to pay it back. So yes, we did borrow money last year. Yes, we did pay it back with tax money. Yes, we did. Which is something that you know, Mayor, Rosie knows, and the other trustees know that every year we have to go through this because we get our money late. We know that already. So I'm saying we didn't have to pay it back. We didn't borrow money. Yes, we did borrow money,
So
but we paid it back. Only
what's
thing,
the solution?
the solution,
Solution.
then like I said, I need to sit down and talk to Mohan and yourself, and we can go over this again and look at it. I can show you this, but right now, subject everybody to this is gonna take a while. But each and everything that I talked about or that I have in it is here. I don't have all the solutions. If I did have all the solutions, believe me, things would be a lot different than what they are right now, but I don't have the solutions. I'm just asking that we at least come close, not just a balanced budget, but a realistic budget, that we come close to having a realistic budget, that we don't have to go out there and take money from the cell tower, take money from whoever we take it from, and then pay it back later. We've always had to do this because of taxes. Now we're doing it because of whatever. We had to levy money to the taxpayers this year. They had to pay an increase because we had to pay our bonds. Not saying that we won't have to do it again, but I'm looking at these numbers that we have, how much money that we owe and certain things. They're coming due, man. They're coming due. Where's their money going? I don't know. Unless somebody sitting out there who wants to write a check. But then I don't see where the money's going to come. But don't start off knowing. Push it to the side, so we'll deal with that in December, we'll deal with that in November, we'll deal with that later. That's not how, I mean, at least we can come close and say, okay, we know every year we have a drop between April and September because of the taxes. We know that. But right now, we're looking at a drop before it even gets to that part, because guess what? We get no more tax money after next month. After August, we get no more until next year, February, whatever. We have to do what we have for right now. That's right now. We get no more because you got your 2 tax payments already. So after September, that's it. So we have to deal with that. All I'm saying is we have to come up with something that's more tangible than what we have. And you're right, I didn't get a chance to go to it, but I did have a chance to do it now.
I think one thing you have to remember too, though, I mean, you've been done this work for a long time, that Sauk Village has always had to borrow money. Going back,
Yes, we did.
we've always,
Yes,
Sauk
we did.
Village has always, going back to before the previous administration, because they stopped it.
But you said we didn't borrow money last
But-
year. Yes, we did.
Sauk
Yes, we did.
Village, it was a norm for Sauk Village, especially in the drought times, to have a
Yes.
loan
Yes, it is.
for $500,000.
Yes, it did. Every year.
So every year, so the village should continue making payroll and doing what they need to do.
Yes, we did.
During the-
Yes, we did. And
South
that's,
Village has never had a fund that we could grow or we had money in there for a rainy day.
there's no projection, Mayor. There's nothing in writing stating that we're going to set aside X amount to do whatever. There's no projections in
South
that.
Village has always tried to say, we're going to set a certain amount aside.
Where-
Never
where?
had the money.
But where is it at, Mayor? I mean, even if there's at least a guideline or
I
something.
remember when Bev was our finance director, one year we said, we're gonna put $25,000 to the side. But you know what, the $25,000 never got put to the side because we had to make sure we continue paying bills. So you talk about being realistically, hey, you know what, I could say, we're gonna put $100,000 to the side. But realistically, it's not gonna happen. We're taking the money that's coming in and we're paying the bills. We know that we've got other bills that are sitting out there. You talk about your agent report that will be resolved once lawsuits are settled. We know that there's other bills in there that are already projected that will be paid when the work is completed on the wells. So you talk about this large amount of money.
There is.
A lot of that money is getting paid as litigation ends, as the work on the wells gets finished, because those funds will be paid through the IMP. So, again, there's a lot of things that are included in there, so we don't lose sight of it. But we know that it's going to be paid throughout this next year. Trustee.
So, question. We talked on the 30th, and forgive me, I don't remember. This budget, where to start? Obviously, we want to get this budget passed as soon as possible. What's the deadline?
It has to be passed before the month of,
End of the month.
so,
For the month of July.
31st.
Awesome, Okay.
or else we
It's the
will
15th.
divide it into that.
Okay, that gives us 16 days. Here's my question.
There's other things that happen too. Again, what you have before you is a proposed budget. I mean, as long as something gets passed by the end of the month, we're okay. The board can go off and start looking at stuff, and we can always go back and do an amendment. There's amendments that can be made after it's passed. And again, I've been asking this board for how many months? Twice a month, on the first Tuesday and on the third Tuesday, to come up with cost-saving initiatives. To come up with ways that we can either bring revenue into the budget or cut money going out of this budget. I've been asking this board for months. I've only had a couple of trustees that have come up and started working on projects. But again, you know, and like I told the board, what we did with the department heads was give us your budget, what you need for this next year, what you want. I call it their wish list. Mohan put all the numbers together in a budget form. It was $5 million over what we project we're going to receive this next year. $5 million has already been cut from this budget before you even saw it.
So just, that's why I said I didn't have the numbers.
No, I'm telling you, and I've been telling the board how many times during the meetings that I'm working on this, there's a $5 million shortfall that we're working on. So what ended up happening was, the department heads put everything together, it came to me, I started looking at, and we had to start making major cuts. Okay? $5 million has been cut off this so we can present the board with a balanced budget. Before I presented it to the board, I went back to the department heads and said, get back with me if there's anything that I cut that you need, or if you want to change anything. I had 2 department heads came back to me, and that was the police department and public works. And we made some additional changes before I presented it to you. Okay? What you saw was a balanced budget that when I first received it was $5 million higher than what we projected coming in. Now, I've got no problem going back and amending budgets. I'm wide open. In fact, I've made this very clear that if any trustees have something that you want to present to this board, I will open up the floor. You can take full credit, and you can go on and you can tell the residents what you've done for this community. Nothing has to come through the mayor's office. And I don't have to say the mayor did this or anything. I'm looking to the trustees to step up to the plate. And again, you may have 13 pages worth of stuff where you went through and you nitpicked every single page of a 27-page budget. Okay, so of a 27-page budget, you come up with 13 pages worth of issues that you don't I don't know, if approve of or like or something. But I'm just asking that we come back with a solution. Anyway, so if you have item number 1, you say professional services are $800,000, what is the solution to reduce that or to make a cut somewhere for the $800,000? You talked about $100,000 for the police department. Okay, what's your solution to put another $100,000 back in the police department if you think we're going to if we're going to need it for overtime? And what are you putting in place as part of that solution to make sure that overtime is cut? Again, you talk about $300,000 for transfers. Okay, if you don't want to transfer $300,000, where's the $300,000 going to come from? And again, he's already explained to you how that works. It's expenses the general fund has to pay for on behalf of your water, sewer, and streets. So what it is you want to call it a transfer, it is being transferred from those accounts, but it's more or less reimbursing the general fund for stuff that we're doing and we're paying for on the general fund. So, you know, again, I'm just looking for a solution. I've said over this thing and I've said with the department heads and again, I said off the bat, the budget is probably not, and I probably can honestly say, it's not everything they want, right? I'm looking at one of them right now. They want a lot more. And sitting in this position, if I could give them everything they want, I would have. But the fact is, and the reality is, we only project a certain amount of money coming into this community. So what we're looking at is making sure our department heads have what they need and trying to make sure we provide them with what they need and continue to run this village. You talk about having an aging report. South Village has always had an aging report. It's nothing new, you talk like it's new. South Village has always had an aging report. And we continue to try to pay it down. You say we're at $400,000 over, well, what was it, 2009, we were over $500,000. So you know, I think the aging report's probably coming down. Again, it's not coming down as fast as we want it to, but it is coming down. And the goal will be continued to bring it down. So, it's tough. This budget is tough. And I'm not gonna lie to you. There was things that you talk about, you know, we know crime is a major issue in our community. But you know what? Inside this budget is funds available for police and fire pension board, or police and fire commission to go out and start another list of police officers. Now, we know that's going to take time, but we're going to spend money to go have a list made where people can come in and apply for the job, they can do their testing, they can go have their polygraphs, they can have their physicals, the village should be paying for all this, so that we can look for more additional police officers on the street. So, again, there's a lot here. But again, when we look at this budget, there's a lot of things we look at creatively. You know, again, cutting expense for fixing an aging fleet and putting new squads on the street for a lower amount for a lease. Same thing with the Public Works Department. Instead of putting additional money into our aging fleet in the Public Works Department, we put $25,000 for them to go negotiate to get additional trucks with the same type of lease program that we have for our police department. So it's a challenge. I'm not doubting, what's the word I'm looking for? You're right, trustee. This is a challenging budget when it comes to reducing overtime. When it comes to making sure we live within our means. When it comes to, again, not getting everything that as a department head, they and we may want.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sitting here, and I'm not gonna do this, go back and forth. First of all, as I stated before, I wasn't part of that. You said I was asked to be part of. I'm sorry, I didn't get that memo. That's the first thing. As far as me, and you stated yourself that you didn't even know what it was going to look like until after you talked to the department head. So how can I even think about trying to do anything with this budget until I get the budget in front of me? I can't speculate. I can't. If I did that, then first thing I would be accused of jumping the gun because I don't even know what you're doing with it, what you have. So that's the only reason why I had to take that time. As far as the deadline is concerned, we knew the deadline back in January.
That's right.
We knew exactly when the deadline was in January. This is July, so don't tell me that, bro, we got a deadline. We've had a deadline. But don't make it like we have to hurry up now. I'm sorry.
I wasn't able to finish, so that's not why I asked that. What I was gonna say, if while you're bringing up the deadline, because I brought that up, what I was gonna say is that this going back and forth is not doing anything. It's not conducive to producing a result. So if you have 13 pages, and the mayor's willing to sit down with you, and Mohan is willing to sit down with you, then why, I'm sorry, then why are we having this conversation right now?
I asked that question.
What I'm saying is that if we have a budget and it has to be passed by the 13th, or by the 31st, and the mayor is saying that we can come back and amend it, great. We either pass this and amend later, set a date to rehab another budget meeting, because clearly that's what we need, or we don't pass this, and the three of you sit down and look at your numbers, and then the board is presented with a new budget, which then we would have another budget meeting, which again, clearly is what we need. Or we just say, forget it to the deadline, and whatever happens, happens. But there's no point in presenting this to the audience, because clearly there's a problem with the budget. The entire board's not okay with it. Okay, then let's revisit it. But going back and forth about what I know, what you know, what happened, fine. You've got documentation, provide it to the board, or provide it to the mayor and the finance director. You three review it, bring it back to us, and let us review That's what we did. We looked at it, we said it was okay. If it's not okay, then there's no point that for 50 minutes we've been going back and forth.
But there is a point, trustee. Number one, it says been out there for public review. So this is what the budget is off. Is this something that's already been proposed, the board has already discussed it? This is something that, again, has to be passed before the end of the month. But, and again, it's a living document that can go back and we can make changes in the minute. So to try to hold something up, just to make us in violation of not.
Don't, man, please don't say
By
that. Please don't
not
say
making
that.
us.
That's,
passing
now
budget
you're,
for-
please don't even put that on record. I never said hold anything up. I never said do not
Did I
pass.
mention your name?
No,
I
you don't
did not-
have
I
to.
didn't
You
say
don't
that.
have to. You said just by us holding this up. I didn't say nothing about holding anything up. I didn't even say anything about not voting on it. So don't say that. Don't say that that instead of holding this up, no. I'm one trustee. You have 6 trustees on this board. If the 5 trustees or 4 say pass this budget, guess what? It's passed. It doesn't make a difference about what I say or what I do. If the 5 trustees want, or 4 trustees, if the majority of the trustees want to pass this budget, fine. That's what they do. Only thing I'm bringing up is that I had some questions. I'm not trying to start or stop anything. I'm saying I had a chance to look over this. Please be clear. I had a chance to look over this. This is what I came up with. It has nothing to do with trying to stop this budget. It has anything to do with trying to hold anything up for a deadline or whatever. These are some of the questions that I was able to ask. And I said before, I would be willing to sit down from Thursday till next week, any day you want to, with you and Mohan and go over this. But as far as trying to hold it up or whatever, no. The people came out here tonight, they have questions. They may want to ask. These are just my questions. I'm the person that brought this particular thing up. Nobody else did. This is something I brought up. This is the only thing I'm asking. You asked the question when you went around and when you started the meeting, does anyone have any questions? Anything pertaining to this? That's all I did. Like you said, we've been on this for 55 minutes. We do not have to go and amend anything. If this is okay, yes, we said, like I said before, I said okay because the numbers were right. I didn't have a chance to look at it in the 2 hours that I actually had a chance to look at it when I got it that Monday. So we can move on. These are some of the things that I have, questions about. I'm available whatever time you guys went, Thursday, Friday, Saturday of this week, and then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, anytime after 3 o'clock. I'm available. If that's what you want to do. If not, then I have no problem with that. But don't say that it will be this or it will be that. No, sir.
Okay, Trustee, first of all, I just wish that the trustees had your notes in front of them. I wish, number 1, number 2, that you would have provided this earlier, because some of this stuff we could have been able to answer.
I just finished it.
And have additional information.
I just finished it. So, I mean, but this is not the Bible. It says on here, budget analysis prepared by Derek Burgess. This is nothing to do with, I'm trying to augment your budget. Your budget is the way it is. These are just some of the questions that I asked these at the budget hearing. I asked about them. So, we can move on and please, meet after 7 o'clock, please, let's move on.
Trustee, are you done? Next, I would like to finish by saying, I would love to sit down with you and go over this. I would just ask that you please send it to Mohan and myself. You can either send it to us electronically, you can give us a hard
I'll make
copy.
copies tonight.
I don't care how you do it, so that we can start to review. But it is important that a budget pass before the end of the month. Again, it's something that I'm open to. I'm very open to. And we can go through some of the stuff, and again, I think it's something that as we go through, we can either make sure it's available, or we can make it available to the trustee. You can review it. But again, it's important that a budget gets passed. But it's also important to realize that we can go back and review this budget. If there's solutions to and I'd say solutions to paying, like your agent reports and things like that. Again, I'm all in favor of getting that involved in there. But it's important also that we keep our current personnel levels where we're at. It's also important that we bring additional police officers on our streets. So there's certain things that we're looking at that is important when it comes, especially to the safety and well-being of residents of South Village. So, anyone else? Trustee?
Trustee, let me know, you said you had
Can you just like
at least
this? Yes, ma'am.
you said you had at least 13 pages of stuff that you found you are concerned.
Yes.
Hi, you got 13 pages. Hi. And you just told the mayor you're willing to sit with the finance director and go over those 13 pages of concern. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. So we still have a couple of days left. Is there any way possible you get with Mohan the next couple of days?
Yes.
And you feel like Trustee Williams stated, if it has a major effect on this present budget we're looking at, then I think we should take extra days to take a look at those 13 items, as the trustee pointed out. And if you're willing to do it, Mohan is here, I don't think he's gonna go anywhere. Let's take a couple of days, look at it, and do it. Is that possible, Mayor?
Definitely.
Agree. Are we in agreement to that, sir?
Tomorrow's gonna be another question because we've got stuff we're working on tomorrow, right?
I said Thursday, so.
Okay. Mohan,
Yeah.
let's do it.
But Mayor and the board, my request is to have this budget passed as it is without any changes.
Correct.
Going forward, maybe after the month, after the budget is passed, next month we can make a supplemental budget and get it over with.
Correct.
So that we will not be in violation of state law as well as the county and
If you two gentlemen get it passed down, get it all set and everything, why can't it be in our box over the weekend, take a look at it and
Because what you have is you have a budget that has already been presented to the public.
public?
It has already been out for public view.
And,
We're here to review that budget that the village board has already said that this is what we're going to be presenting to the public, this is what we're
Yeah.
looking at passing. So, again, it's important that, we take notes, we're going to listen to the public, we're in the recessing because we're going to go into our 7 o'clock meeting. But it's going to be important that when the public comes up and finally gives their comments, we take these notes, we look into some of this stuff, so that when we look into this, after we get this passed, when we go back into this next month and start looking at, see what amendments do we want to make, we have all that information together.
I have, I don't know. You're saying that we're going to still move forward with the budget that we have in hand, and then after that, we're going to amend whatever needs to be amended. Then why am I having this meeting? Why are we doing
Because this is for the public.
it? I mean, no, I'm not talking about, this meeting, yes, for the public. I'm not talking about that meeting. I'm not talking about, yes, I want the public, yes, that's what they came out for, so they can talk about the budget. Talking about why we, yourself, me, and you having this meeting, and we're gonna go ahead and pass this, what we have, and then later on, we're gonna amend. So that means I'm gonna go ahead and pass this. Then why am I going back? Why am I gonna have this meeting when we're already passed?
because otherwise, if we don't file the budget well before 30th, we are violating the state law.
Mohan, Mayor, Mayor, just 1 second, please. We've had meetings for less than, that we have a call meeting for less than for this. If this is that important, we can vote on this on the 29th of July. If that's the case, if it's that important. I'm just saying, but so don't say we have to pass it next week. We've had meetings for less than to vote money out for other reasons. This is the budget. If we feel that it has to be looked over a little bit more, then what's wrong with that? I'm not in favor of passing it, knowing that there's discrepancies, and then come back after the fact when we're gonna amend.
Well, let's look at it this way. You want to stop the process, which we've already started, which on June 30th, the village board met and presented a proposed budget to the public. That had to be out there for a total of 10 days.
10 days, it's posted.
10 days, had to be posted in the newspaper. We are coming back here having a public hearing, so the public can give comment, which they haven't been able to for the last hour. And again, what ended up happening was that the budget would end up passing next week. What you're asking for is that the process be placed on hold, give time for you to meet with the mayor and the finance director to make changes. Then we have to come back and meet with the board, present those changes again. Then we have to give another 10 days for the public to review the new. And then we have to set up a public hearing, which puts us past the time that we need to do to have this passed. Now, why would you have a meeting with the mayor and
I don't need to have I don't need to have, if you already made up your mind that you want to do it this way, why am I having a meeting with you guys?
Question, I just have a.
Why? Why am I doing this? If you're gonna go ahead and pass this and do this and then come back later on, and maybe you amend it, maybe you won't, but guess what? You will still have this particular budget passed, and the only thing that can be said to me is, well, we passed, we can't do it, what you want to do. So, I'm just saying, I'm one person. Please, we can move on, you need questions from the audience, I'm through with that, I'm through.
Well, I just have a question. Number one, what's the penalties if we're late?
The county can dock our tax levy.
Awesome, okay, great. Second thing, they can knock our tax levels if we're late. Sure, okay, so A, our option is to be late, that's an option, we'll throw that out there. B, you can't meet until Thursday, trustee Burgess?
You can't meet tomorrow.
Oh, okay, I'm just asking, I'm looking at the calendar, because it needs to be put in the paper, okay? 10 days. I just checked with the village clerk, it's calendar days, not business days. So it has to be in the paper by the 20th, which would be Sunday, because Sunday's paper probably be a little bit more expensive, but hey, let's work on that. So if today's the 15th, and you can't meet till the 17th, then the board would have to meet the 18th or 19th. I'm not available on the 19th, so I'm just throwing it out there. But the board would have to be on the 18th to review the changes that you guys have come up with in the 24 hours that you've had it, and then it has to be posted by the 20th, so that if we have our full day, so then we have another meeting on the 31st, so then we could actually have a budget meeting, so the audience can come in and look at your changes. All of which I'm okay with. Sure, let's do that. But we all have to understand it has to be in by 10 days. It's not about what the mayor has decided he wants to do. It's what we can do because you very diligently went through and took the time to look at the budget. However, you did it 16 days after we got the budget. And I'm not saying the 16 days because I'm talking about it took you so long. What I'm saying is now we're at an even bigger time crunch. So if this is what we're going to do, we all need to pull out our calendars and realize this week Friday, we have another budget meeting, and then on the 31st, we have this exact same meeting to allow the audience to talk. Which, again, I'm completely okay with. But if that's not realistic, then our only other options are to pass this budget and then meet on the 4th or the 6th, not the 5th because that's not out. So we can meet on August 4th or 5th to have another meeting, or 4th or 6th to have another meeting, or we can just do this whatever and suffer the penalties for the county. Those are our only 3 options. What's it going to be? Penalties? Meeting in August after we pass this budget, or do everything we can do to make the changes, pass the corrected budget before the 31st, which means Friday, we'll see all of our smiling faces again. What are we going to do?
And I made it very clear, it's important that we get a budget passed. And I've got no problem sitting on the trustee and the finance director, looking at these and coming back for the village board, again, next month, and looking at if there's any amendments that need to be made, and it's called what, supplemental or something, budget. But again, I don't think the timing is realistic, because if anything happens, if someone can't make it to the board, we don't have quorum, the timing is just too tight. So.
That's my question, because that's what we have to do. So on the last board meeting. You have to pass it by the 31st. I think that you made these, you'd like to present these changes. I would like to see these changes. You've got a piece of paper in front of you, I know. I'd like to see your changes. Let's set a date so that the trustee can feel validated in his changes.
Again, it's too early to set a date, because what has to happen is the trustee needs to sit down, provide the information. There's information that is missing that has to be provided, so they can take a look at the whole entire fact. So that's why, again, we set it up at a committee meeting in August to go over the changes, review. Again, once he has all the information, there may be some other changes that need to be made. So again, this is not something that is cut and dry. This is something that needs to be set down and review. But with that said, I'm going to ask for a motion to recess, so we go into our 7 o'clock meeting. And I'm going to end up asking at the 7 o'clock meeting, we have a Springfield update, and when we get in the meeting, I'm just going to ask that we table item number 3 and table item number 4, so we can have a quick meeting tonight, committee meeting, and we'll go right back into our budget hearings. So, is there a motion to recess? Okay, motion, is there a second? That motion is second. So, clerk, please call roll.
Burgess. Yes. Workman. Myers. Yes. Hoskins. Yes. Washington. Yes. Williams.
All right, meeting recess. And then we'll move right into our 7 o'clock meeting. Our call 7 o'clock meeting to order. Will clerk please call roll.
Burgess. Here. Morrison. Myers. Here. Hoskins. Here. Washington. Here. Williams. Here.
Again, I'm going to ask, we'll go into item number 2. We have a Springfield update from Alon. We're going to have you come up. I'm also, when we come with this Springfield update, I'm going to be asking it in the table item number 3, item number 4. We're going to have public comment. And item number 6, trustee, you want to say anything? Item number 7, we will adjourn and we'll go right back into our public hearing. What's that? No. Rosie, can you fix that? Sure. Thank you. Make sure you speak closely, or they'll be yelling at you in the back. So, is the red light on or green light on?
Great. Thank you, Mayor, and members of the Board of Trustees. I'm Al Ronan. I've been retained as the lobbyist for the City of Sauk Village. We had a very aggressive session that we worked on down in Springfield. I'll be glad to go over the highlights, talk a little bit about the firm, and hopefully talk about what our agenda is for the future. This session, well, first of all, a little background on the firm. We have a 4-person firm that works in Springfield on your behalf. I'm a former member of the House. We have a couple of attorneys who also work with the firm on a full-time basis. One's a former member of the Senate. We also have my daughter who is a former assistant state's attorney and also part of the former member of the governor's cabinet. And then we have a full-time representative based in Springfield who is the former chief of staff of the Illinois Department of Transportation. Our focus really is twofold. Number one, we work on trying to secure additional funding for projects for your town. We were successful. This session, we were not able to pass the kind of capital bill that the governor and the legislative leaders on the Democratic side proposed. There was a strong belief that we needed to have a significant capital plan so that we could continue the capital projects that had been forthcoming off of the last bill that we passed 6 years ago. 6 years ago, we passed a $31 billion capital plan. That was before I was engaged with this community. But off of that capital plan, we were able to secure a significant number of funding projects for the communities that we represent. This year, we were able to get a very small capital plan passed with no new tax increases but it was dedicated through a refinancing package to fund street repairs on $1 billion worth of state roads, and then we were able to add $100 million for local roads throughout the state of Illinois, which was determined on a per capita basis. That was a continuation of a program we did institute in the plan that we passed 6 years ago. Sauk Village, as well as every other community in Illinois, benefited by an additional allotment every year off your motor fuel tax money. That was $45,000 a year that you've gotten over the last 5 years. Then with the bill we passed this year, there's an additional $45,000 coming in. It's not a lot of money, but at least it's money that would have been here if we weren't able to get the capital bill passed. We reported that into the mayor, and Mayor, I don't know, do you share the report?
They have I made another copy from, they have the mid-year and they have the end of the year.
And then we also submitted, in addition to the $1.1 billion highway improvement plan, I also submitted the refi bill that passed. And I think you've got copies of the 4 projects that were pending for Sauk Village. Some of those projects, when they do a refi bill, what they do is they take all the projects that were pending for every community in the state of Illinois. It was about a 1,400-page bill. And there were 4 projects that we submitted, and we are looking for an update on this funding status on those projects if you have received the money.
We have not received money, we start putting in the information, they asked for additional information, so between the finance director and our engineers, there was some information they were asking for, especially for the parks.
Right.
But $135,000 for repairs to the Park District, Arrowhead, Carroll, $50,000 for general infrastructure, $25,000 for infrastructure, and $175,000 for other infrastructure improvements.
Right, which would be added together. Now, again, part of it is going to the parks, but again, it benefits the community. You're in line for about $400,000 in state funding, and as soon as that paperwork is submitted, we will expedite that through most of it comes out of the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, and we will expedite to make sure that those monies are released for the community. We also worked on, the mayor was diligent, which we like when mayors are diligent. On April 24th, the mayor sent us a letter on 3 pieces of legislation that you were very concerned about. One was the mandatory manning bill, which was passed out of the House. It really causes a problem. Everyone wants safe fire departments and the ability to protect the citizens of their community. A mandatory manning bill is a real problem for non-home rule communities. It's an issue of what's the proper number of firefighters and paramedics a community needs. It was pushed by the fire union. The bill became very controversial. It did pass out of the House, and we were able to have it held in the Senate, where it's still pending. The main thing is that now there can be continued negotiations with municipal officials and the union to try to see if we can work out a compromise. We had the same thing. There was a bill for the dealing with consolidation of fire departments. Again, consolidation seems to make sense. The union came in with some very strong demands to make it virtually impossible to do consolidation. And again, we were able to have that bill held in the House. A big credit from this area, Representative Anthony DeLuca really worked hard to come in with a compromise with the union to have that bill put in a much better format. The third piece of legislation, Mayor, that you asked us to work on was the prohibiting ticket quotas. We had no chance to stop it. It was overwhelmingly popular with the members of the General Assembly, and I guarantee you that no matter if I had a machine gun, we could have stopped the idea of prohibiting ticket
Can you use the mic, please? It's getting hard to hear you back here.
Please, pull the mic on closer.
Sure, I'm sorry. So basically, the mayor contacted us in April about 3 specific pieces of legislation that he thought it was important that we work on, and we were successful on 2, and the third, as I said, had overwhelming support. And then the final issue that we're working on was the letter that we received, Mayor, concerning some specific grants that you're going to try to go after this year, which will not require legislative action, but what we will do is you prepare the paperwork and the professional staff prepare the paperwork. We'll be working with the various agencies that you've highlighted. And all three programs you're going after, we've worked on projects like this in the past, and we'd be more than happy to see what we can do to try to get some of these additional dollars into Sauk Village to improve the community. That's kind of an overview of what we've worked on. Right now, the General Assembly is in recess. They come back in the third week in November, after the November election, and we will hopefully again work diligently on a much more expanded capital bill. Capital bills are important because that's one of the best mechanisms available for communities, school districts, community college districts, and every unit of local government to help fund and expand programs so vitally needed at the local level. So we're cautiously optimistic that we will have a capital bill of a much greater nature in the November/January session. So those are that's our goal for the future, and I know you'll be working on different ideas that you'll bring to our attention. So,
Any questions?
Before the $1,000 that you were talking about, when can we, expecting an
they
update?
have 45,000.
No, 400,000, that's for the parks and everything. I know we applied for it. Is there a deadline, or if we haven't heard by a certain period of time, it's all for?
No, here's what I'll tell you, trustee. When the General Assembly does a reappropriation bill or a refi bill, what that means is that those appropriations are still very much alive. That's what needed to be done. So that was done. So that we've now got the entire year to get those funded by the state of Illinois. They're not going to go away. No matter what happens in the election cycle in November, those projects are still very much alive. What needs to be done, though, is that paperwork has to be submitted to the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity so that we can then, after they review it and approve it, then we have to get the approval, obviously, then out of the governor's office, which I don't see any problem. And then we work with the comptroller's office to actually get the voucher cut for the village. So all four of those, that $400,000, very much alive, and I would not anticipate anything except making sure we get the paperwork.
I'm just being realistic. Can I see it this year, or more like that we're looking at through legislation and things, maybe April or May of next year?
If the paperwork gets in, I think we could theoretically see the release this year. But I don't know where the status of the paperwork is. That's
Okay, no, I'm just trying to be realistic. If that money is there.
Some of these, I think, have been sitting there for a while, and because when we passed the last capital bill, let me put it in perspective. We passed the last major capital bill 6 years ago. It was a $31 billion bill. We have now allocated all those dollars out, and many, many billions have already been spent. The 4 projects for Sauk have not been released, and now we're aggressively working with your professional staff to get the paperwork done and get them released. So I'd like to see it this year, but again, until the paperwork gets in there, I can't push the departments to get the release.
Makes sense. I just want to kind of get an idea.
I would hope this year, the $45,000 from IDOT, that's a second allocation. As I told you, there were 5 that you've received.
Right.
This will be a second one this year. That will be this calendar year.
Now, are this is the grant that we're talking about, the 400,000. Is that a grant that we're talking about? This is just.
There are 4 separate appropriations.
Okay.
And if you want me to, real quickly, I can tell you what the 4 projects are. $135,000 for renovation repairs to Park District for Arrowhead and Carroll Parks. $50,000 for general infrastructure. Well, the other 3 are all for general infrastructure. And that's what we like it to be left broad, so that then the folks in this room can make the determination on what they'll be spent on. $50,000, $25,000, and $175,000. So that's a total of $250,000 for general infrastructure improvements, 3 separate grants.
And when we went in for this money, again, they left it open, which makes it nice, but we already planned $50,000 going into jetting and B-boxes. We have a lot of, again, infrastructure needs to be repaired. 25,000, we're already looking at replacing fire hydrants, because we have a lot of fire hydrants that need to be replaced. And then 135,000 was for some of the roads and stuff that we need to replace.
And all of those, when that paperwork gets into DCEO, they expedite those, because those are things that are very logical. DCEO takes a much more jaundiced view on some towns. Sometimes we'll try to move off into more esoteric projects. What you're asking for are things that every community is suffering from, a need for additional
So
resources.
the reason why I was asking, I'm just wondering, are these self-contained grants, which means we don't have to pay anything?
No, these are straight grants. There is no matching.
Good, that's what
Just as the 45,000 for motor
Right.
fuel tax, no matching.
no match.
These are just dollars, these are dollars that if you didn't get state funding, then you'd be using your local property taxes. And since everybody in town pays their income tax, there should be a return to every community. Problem is that, you know, that's why communities bring people like us on board so that we have a better chance to get the money.
Any other questions? That's quick. That's too easy. Oh, you'll definitely get another letter from me, probably, well, until we get this budget taken care of, but probably next month. On some of the projects that we're looking forward, going forward. Plus you have also, you still have some of the white papers that I sent you for the looping. There's like 5-point-something million, and one of them 1-point-something, and another one.
Yeah, everything that you send us, Mayor, we keep track of. And then, obviously, the serious dollars, the $1 million projects that will require a capital bill.
Correct.
But again, we're cautiously optimistic that the General Assembly, when they come back in November and /January, will be looking at those. So that we were successful, like I said, 6 years ago.
I know they were asking for one question about Arrow Park, and our engineers sent it off to our attorneys to get the legal description. So once I have, but all I'll do is I'll forward you
Yeah,
the email. Yeah, in fact, I'll make sure that they start keeping you involved in that correspondence, because I see the correspondence, but I don't think your name's on there.
Yeah, that would be very helpful, because as you're working with DCEO or whatever agency, IDOT or DCO, the more information we have, the easier it is for us to track them. So that, yeah, it would be helpful to you.
Any other questions? Good.
Yes. It was
130,000.
130,000. Right.
It's the parks and stuff. It's already part of the budget. It's already been included. Huh? Are you Arrowhead Park or Carroll Park? No. That money, that 135,000 is for repairs to this park district for both Arrowhead and Carroll Parks. So that's what that 135,000.
That's how that's the actual wording in the bills, and there's really no flexibility. Once it's in the legislation for a refi, now, when that decision was made, I have no idea.
I mean, we put that in quite a long time ago for those, because that grant money or money available is through a portion that they give money to open spaces and to parks.
Oh, was that part of an OSLED grant?
I think it may have been.
Could have been.
So, because that's why they had to make sure that it was spelled out which parks we're going to work on and repair it.
I urge municipalities, when we're going after money strictly for the municipality, to try to keep it as general as possible, because that gives you the greatest flexibility on determining what the most important needs are at the particular time when the money gets released. General infrastructure or road repairs are always the best items, because you always have roads need repair, and general infrastructure can go for anything that is a capital improvement for the community. Water repairs, sewer repairs, curb repairs, those are all general infrastructure.
When you talk about road repairs, they have to update the list, because two of the roads that were on that list are getting repaired through CDPD grant money this year. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming out, and we appreciate you doing for us in Springfield.
You know what? Just to make it clear, your legislators are vital, and I know that the more you communicate with your legislators, the easier it is for me to do my job. And Sauk Village, I don't know if you're blessed or cursed, but there are a lot of legislators who represent parts of your town. I think it's a blessing, because then there are more people I can talk to and urge them to give part of their allotments, when they're given allotments, to help the community. So, and you do have good people, legislators, who are committed to do the right thing. So, thank you very much, and good luck with your budget.
Thank you. All right, I would ask that we table item number 3. Any issues or concerns? I see nothing. I know that you wanted to have it, but I want to get back into the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say to all of the Neighborhood Watch Committee members and all of the Block Club captains that came out tonight, because we were going to highlight, the mayor put it on the agenda for us to highlight the different committees and what we're doing. A lot of people left work, they got babysitters just to come for our presentation. So I just personally want to thank all of you all for coming tonight, and I'll let you know when the mayor schedules, but we do have your badges.
All right, again, thank you very much for coming out. I definitely want to hear the presentations from the committees, but I think it's important that we move on with the budget hearing. All right, I'm going to ask the table, item number 4. Any questions, comments, concerns? All right, move to item number 5, public comments. All questions and comments must be directed to the mayor. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to comment on a topic of their choice. Each speaker will be allowed 1 opportunity to speak. And remember, we are in the committee meeting portion. We will be going back to the public hearing for the budget after we adjourn from this meeting. So if you would please come forward, say your name and address for the record.
You ready?
You're ready.
I am Francine Anderson, and I live at 1606 216th Street. Mr. Mayor, one thing I would like to note in this session is that I saw it very disrespectful to leave the budget meeting to go for you to have someone else from your lobbyists to just talk about some kind of projects that you have that we, the public, got no information about, and that you say is part of this budget. I'll come back to discuss that. The other thing I would like to know is that I see our police department a lot. They stop a lot of cars. And in doing that, I'm sure that our toll fee money has increased. But I also know that I have several neighbors whose homes have been broken into, and then there's no one that's been apprehended. So, I want to know, what are we going to do, or what do you as a board want to do to refocus the efforts of our police department to end some of the break-ins and to stop some of the drug dealing and crime that goes on in Sauk Village? That's question number 2. Question number 3 would be, since this budget is having such a problem and we need to eliminate some monies, you know and I know that the best way in order to balance a budget is to eliminate some staff. When are you, as trustees and mayor of this town, will take the step that's necessary to bring this budget to a balance? Those are my 3 questions that I'll adhere to for my answer.
All right. Ms. Anderson, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in quite some time. So
Yeah, here, sir.
the,
Last budget meeting.
well, yeah. So, but, some of the things that the lobbyists talked about has been discussed during regular board meetings. We try to make sure to keep the public up to date on what's going on, what they're working for us on in Springfield. During the last budget hearing on June 30th, we talked about some of the things that we talked about tonight. It was discussed, the $135,000, $175,000, $50,000, $25,000. We have been talking about what they've been working for us in Springfield. So again, we try to make sure that we try to keep this information in front of the residents. And again, once all the paperwork is completed, we'll be coming back and letting everyone know, and probably, we'll have a little party, about getting this money, because it's important, and with especially the infrastructure, getting the B-boxes and the jetting allows us to go off where residents are not paying their bills because the water can't be turned off allows the village to go in there, make those repairs needed, and be able to turn that water off and start making people start paying their bills, and then we bring revenue back into the village, rather than it just going out because we can't stop the water. When it comes to the $175,000 for infrastructure, we already know we're getting approximately $400,000 from CDBG. In fact, we're fixing Jeffrey from South Trail all the way to 217th Place. We're fixing Peterson Avenue. I think it's 216 something dollars for Constance, if I remember right. Don't quote me on that. I think it's something like that. That's getting fixed through CDBG. We know we're getting $175,000 for infrastructure, which allows us to go off and we have a priority list where worst streets are in South Village, allows us to start working off that priority list and putting that back into additional streets that need to be repaired. So we are working diligently to get those funds from the state so we can put it right back into our streets. $25,000 for fire hydrants. We know that we've got fire hydrants throughout the village that need to be replaced. We've been trying for that money now for probably about just about a year. We finally got the okay that we're going to get it. So we've taken out everything that we put together that we sent to the state about a year ago. We're putting it all back together. We're verifying all our numbers. We're resubmitting it so we can start getting that money. So we go out there and start purchasing those fire hydrants and start getting them installed or replaced or repaired, whatever needs to be done. You talk about crime and what we're doing as a board. I can tell you that inside the budget, we're looking at getting the hiring list started for the police department, so we're looking at additional police officers on the street. We have special details that we're looking at the areas that we have the worst crime in, and so we can start addressing those areas. I wish the chief was here because I'm sure he would love to be able to tell you everything that we're working on right now to try to reduce the crime in our community. You talk about eliminating staff. We work very hard not to eliminate staff because that means there's less services for our residents. That means that if you eliminate police officers, there's no one out there stopping criminals. When it comes to eliminating more public works employees, that means you have less people out there that are going to be tree trimming, fixing lights, street lights, plowing streets, filling potholes, turning your water, on and off, fixing water main breaks. We do pretty good for the small amount of people that we have in our public works department. Same thing, our fire department, we're not looking at, fire, it's important that we have a strong fire department. Comes to, we have as employees, I always tell people, they're the ones out there that are taking the blunt of the people upset because they got the traffic stopped and then you pennies on the dollar. So, in fact, part of this budget is our ESDA, and it's nothing, I'm gonna be honest with you. 25 cents per call additional in this budget is what we're giving our ESDA. It's nothing. You think about it, you're gonna go out there for a call for an additional 25 cents, but they do it all the time. So we've got a great group of employees, and I'm not looking to eliminate. We had made cuts last year, and so the cuts that we made last year put us in line for this budget where we don't have to make any additional cuts. And again, as of right now, there's no cuts in this budget. Now, I'm looking for the village board to pass this budget next week, and we'll come back, and if there's amendments that have to be made, the board can make the tough decisions on how we're going to make those decisions, and if it requires cuts, then the board's going to have to make those tough decisions. Because it's not in the best interest of the village to eliminate staff. It's in the best interest that we bring on additional staff in the areas that are needed. The areas of fighting crime is one of the main areas that we need to bring on additional staff. And I will continue pushing and pounding that drum. So, all right, so does anyone else to come to the mic? So, all right.
How are you doing today? My name is Nolan McKinney. I reside at 1763.
Could you repeat your name, please?
Nolan McKinney.
McKay?
Yeah. I reside at 1763 towards 23rd Street. Talk about our street lights. I know you talk about getting to it and everything, but I want to know if there's any kind of supplement that we can do for our street lights. Our street lights went off at least about 2.5 months.
Which one are you?
1763. 223rd.
223rd?
Yeah. Is there anything we can do for any type of street lighting on the block at all?
Is that it? I'm just looking here because I know Public Works is about repairing street lights today, I just want to see where you were. Street lights were repaired on Merrill and 219th Place. They are currently working on Jeffrey Peterson, Damon, and 219th Place. So it seems like they were pretty much on the north side. But let me see when they're going to be heading, because you're on 223rd, so corner of 223rd Jefferson. That's when you're looking at, right? You said 17, I know where you're at. You're in 1700 block.
And the old police station.
Right.
Village Hall.
All right, so I know where you're at. So it seems like right now they're working on the north side, trying to get those streetlights repaired. Let me see when they're going to be heading to the south side. All right. All right, next.
Rose Langston. I just wanted, I keep hearing cost savings. Then during the budget meeting, it almost sounds that if you don't put the budget to vote next week, it almost sounds like you're adding additional meetings, public hearings, so that means more payment to the board members. So that is not cost savings. Makes more sense to pass it, take your time, review the budget, and make your amendments. Thank you.
I do want to bring up real quick on, you bring a good point about additional meetings cost additional money, okay? One thing that we've worked very hard in this last year is trying to schedule meetings on board meeting nights, because the trustees and the board only gets paid for one meeting. So we can have 2 or 3 meetings on that same night and we're going to get paid for one. So like tonight, here we are on a committee meeting night. We had the public hearing for the budget, and we're also having a committee meeting night. In the past, you've seen us come in earlier for executive session, have a meeting, and sometimes something else going on. So we know that there's 4 times a month that the village already meets. There's 4 times a month that the board gets paid. So any additional meetings that have to be held, we try to make sure we hold them on those Tuesdays. So you bring up the point, and it's something we're very careful looking at, because we know that every time we have a meeting, it's about $800 for just the board, just the meeting. And not including having electricity on, opening it up. So it is a cost, but we're able to keep it contained. Again, challenges that our department heads are facing this year. How can they look at something a little different, and how can they move around so they're not paying additional costs? But that's our
Judy Katz here. I wanted to first thank you for having Mr. Roman here. I was wondering for a long time if that man really existed. And it's good to hear some of the things that he had to say. With that said, I agree with Rose Langston, and I understand your answer to that. But one of the questions that I have is, Mr. Burgess is just one trustee sitting up there. And you're going to have a meeting with Mr. Burgess and Mr. Mohan. Why would you do that when you've got 5 other trustees who are going to be expected to say yes to pass a budget that they don't know a damn thing about?
That's right.
They need to be involved as much as Mr. Burgess or anybody else. Math is not my forte, and I don't understand half of what you said. But I would vote yes for that budget with some of the questions that were arisen tonight. And I doubt if some of your trustees understand that budget as of right this minute. So if it took somebody, a trustee, 15 days, 14 days, whatever it was, to come up with what he came up with, I bet the other ones haven't even looked at their budgets and have no questions on it. And I think it's craziness to ask for a vote for a budget that has so many holes in it, if they are holes.
Well, what ends up happening is the meeting that we'll have with trustee Burgess, the finance director, and myself, we'll look at what the trustee has presented, what changes that he's recommending. Again, just looking at, and then of course you have to have your finance director to be able to say where the funds are going to come from, what we're going to cut. Again, what's going to end up happening is the trustees will receive a copy of what he has. They'll be able to start reviewing it. with Mohan, we'll be able to look at the finances, where it's going to come from, and hopefully we will come back to the board and make some recommendations for changes. So at the same time, they'll have whatever the trustee has, and then they'll see what we come back to the table with. They'll also be able to say, what about this, or why not this? And hopefully by that time, the three of us will be able to say, well, we didn't do that because of this. Are we going to agree on everything? Probably not. And I'll be honest with you, because I'm not looking to let people off. And I will do whatever it takes to make sure we continue having our current manpower where it's at and bring on additional police officers. So we won't probably agree on everything, but I'm sure he has things there that, again, maybe I did not see. Again, we talk about thinking creatively. The trustees bring some stuff, and there may be some ways that we can think creatively and make those changes. I'm all in favor of it. And believe me, I'll be the first person that if we come back and amend whatever amendments we make, I'll be the first person to thank Trustee Burgess for bringing us our I've got no problem with that. So, yes.
Hello. My name is Tyrone. I live on 217 Block Carroll. I do a lot in the community. I'm secretary for Neighborhood Watch, and I also have a youth dance group out here. My biggest concern would be the police officer. Now, in the middle of the day, we practice at 11 in the morning. We end practice like around 5. One day we go outside practicing, we about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we hear gunshots. We call the police, but the police don't come out. So it's kind of like, what are we calling the police for if they're not really doing? A couple of days ago, I worked at McDonald's also. I was walking home from work, and right here, across the street from Marathon, you come off the Jefferson, you take the first right, 219th place. Me and my husband were walking down the street about 3 in the morning. I got work at 2, and we're going back to our house, and you see the boys walking down the street, and they're just shooting a gun call. And we're looking like, well, where's the gunfire coming from? And then you hear again, pop, pop, pop. So we turn around, and my husband's like, oh man, there goes the gunfire right there, let's go. And we start running. So it's like, okay, we call the police, but still they don't show up. So, anybody can get shot. What's going to happen? What's going on?
I will pass this off to the police department, and especially the chief will be able to poll, especially when you call the police, there's a record of it. They have to, when I used to be there, they used to have to punch a CR card, they probably still do, to be able to keep track of it. Again, sometimes when you don't see the police officers, sometimes they're there, you just don't know it. And I would have to find out with the chief. They can tell exactly what time the call came in, when the call was dispatched, and what time the police officers arrived at the scene. So, especially for people that have scanners, they hear it all the time. I think it's 23? You hear a police officer, they dispatch a police officer to a certain location, you hear him come across at 23, and he's on the scene. So, but I'll follow up, it's around 21700 block, he said around 2 o'clock in the morning. What was the date on that again? Did you give me a date?
The 11th.
Friday, 11th? Okay. I will follow up with the chief on this one. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, hello, my name is Janisha Schaefer, and I live on 1682 Carolina Drive. My biggest concern is the water. It's not filtered. When I turn it on, it comes on orange. It makes you ashy. It's just not good at all. I would like to know what you guys can do about it.
That it? Currently, we've got, the village received a $4.8 million low interest loan through the IDPA. We are currently working on putting in permanent air strippers. Along with that comes brand new iron removal system. So a lot of times when you see that orange type water, it's because of our iron removal system that need to be replaced. We have an older system, and we need new ones. So we'll end up having a brand new iron removal system. Right now, currently, they're working on what we call well location number 3. In fact, I was just over there this last week to get a review on what's going on. They are moving right along with the new systems in place. They've got the line removal system in place. It's a lot of work. It's amazing. I think if trustees get a chance, you should take the drive over and take a look at what's been happening. They're hoping to have that location completely hooked up and ready to go by the end of the month, beginning of the month. Once we have everything in place, we'll be going out to the IEPA. We're having testing done with the water. And the goal is that once we get all approvals from the IEPA, they will swap over. And then wells number 1 and 2, we call wells 1 and 2, which is our second location. All the work will start on that location there. So I met with the IEPA 2 weeks ago. So about 2 weeks ago, I met with the IEPA, 2 individuals from Springfield, and we talked about current investigations that are going on. We talked about where they're at, and they were going over. I didn't have time to go over them, but they were going over to get a tour of the location also. So there's a lot going on, and we should see a lot of changes once all the systems in place. Thank you.
She would have seen that the water department would have student government there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
Good area. Good area.
She was a student government day person, so I was saying, if it was open, the water department was open then, and not under construction, she would have seen all the things the mayor was talking about, but we couldn't go tour it.
Good evening, my name is Burl Wilkerson. I'm at Jeffrey Avenue at 225. I've heard a lot of talk about, maybe not a lot of talk, but I've heard talk of new equipment for the police department, as well as possible hiring of new officers. I was just concerned about, or wondering, what is the timeline on this? Does it have to, is it based upon the money that you're anticipating on getting these grants that Mr. Lowell was talking about, or what? The other concern I have is concerning the garbage fee on my water bill. And I'm paying that, but I'm also having to buy stickers for them to pick up the shavings. I'd like to know what is the village take on that fees that we have to pay for those lawn stickers.
The police, let's talk about the officers first. Once the village board approves it, they can go ahead and start giving the okay to the police and fire commission to start working on the list. However, we need approval by the village board to be able to move forward on that one. Same thing with the police cars. It will take the village board to approve the budget, where I can move forward on giving the okay to get the lease for the squad cars. Squad cars take a little bit more time because they are older, so they will not order them until the village board approves the budget. The garbage pickup, part of your garbage bill consists of your garbage. You can put as many cans and as many bags out you want of garbage. You're allowed up to one large item a week. But you're correct when it comes to your lawn clippings and that kind of stuff. You have to have a sticker for that, and that was part of one of the agreements that we made so we keep the garbage bill down. I know that there is times of the year that as a village, large branches and trees and things like that, but the village will go through and leave them out there on the curb. We'll go through and pick those up so you're not paying to have those removed. So sometimes people will take their branches and stuff and leave them in a certain location in their yard. So when the village puts them up, that's one way they get out of buying the stickers. So, right.
My name is Jan Clark. I live on Delandis Drive. I also have a problem with our lighting on the south side of the one on Apache, on the corner, Navajo and Delandis, and the one in the middle of the block on Delandis flashes on for a few minutes and then off. My main question is, just a clarification on something you said earlier. You were questioned about letting people know about improvements that you're making, and you said that you were informing the public in July or June on some of these parks. Is that correct?
June 30th meeting.
Okay, but Mr. Roman, when he was here, said that he received a letter from 3 letters from you in April. Now, did you do that on your own, or did the board have any knowledge of that? I'm just wondering.
Is that all you have?
Pardon?
Is that all you have?
That was my question to you. I was wondering if you were going to answer it.
Do you have any other questions?
No.
Okay. All right, I'll make sure that Kevin knows about the lights, the one in the middle tonight is the blinks on and off like that, sounds like it's a bad bulb. So I will make sure he knows about this also. The letters to the lobbyists, it's things that I send out to the lobbyists of what's going on. I get lobby information through Illinois, the IML, or through mayors and managers. So we send that out when it comes to the other projects and stuff that we're looking for money for. And work with our engineering, work with our water department, which is Kevin Waller, of course, all our department heads, looking at what we need funds for, and make sure I get that information off to them also. So a lot of information, especially on the projects and stuff. I think we gave it to the board, that was quite a few months ago. So probably 7 or 8 months ago.
Well, April is when we gave it to them, so I'm sure you gave it to them.
Yeah, so about that time frame. So.
You know that you did that in April? Okay, because I heard a lot of I did, and I didn't hear too much of we. I just like to be sure that the board is involved with things prior to you doing things on your own. Thank you.
My name is Mary Wilkerson. I'm at 225th and Jeffrey. Thank you. I'm at 225th and Jeffrey. Two things I'm concerned about. I've been to many of these meetings and I always hear Mr. Mayor say, I wish the chief of police was here so I can ask him that. I'm not sure why he isn't. I wish that he was also. That was a statement. Also, my husband spoke about the garbage and how much we're paying. Now, I think a lot of villages have separate garbage cans that they put a sticker on, and the waste, the disposal people come and pick them up. And they're not charged for bags and stickers. Just that you might purchase it. I don't know if they're purchasing it or renting it, whatever. I would be willing to pay for the extra garbage can, so that we're not paying 3 times for our garbage pickup. And also, I think the Neighborhood Watch program is a great program. I'd like to see more of the trustees involved, as well as the policemen involved, so that we can all work collaboratively and make this a safer neighborhood. There's too much crime and not enough police coverage in this neighborhood.
All right, the department heads attend the second and fourth meeting of the month. So if you attended last week's meeting, the police chief was there for that one. So it's always the second and the fourth Tuesday of the month. Department heads attend. The first and third is these are committee meetings, so there's discussion. The only time the department head would attend the first and the third meeting is if there was something that affected their department or something that they needed. So the garbage pickup, I think there's no debate. Sorry. I mean, if you want to talk to us afterwards, we can talk. The garbage company, I think they do have a yard waste can, but we'll have to, the best thing to do is call and find out on that one. So, I'm sorry. Your time is done. So, I mean, if you want to talk afterwards, but
I'm sorry, sir.
But,
The young lady was here, you answered her question. She asked you another question, you answered her. Now you can give me the same respect. I have one statement to make. If the chief of police is not going to be here, and we can stand here and ask questions, then how do we ask him questions?
All right.
All right. Seeing none, we'll move to miscellaneous business, the county for trustees. And that's it. Trustee?
Just to comment on one of the comments that was made about the rest of the board looking at the budget. Just for those of you who were here for the budget meeting on the 30th, or have ever participated in any budget meeting that we've ever had since I've been a trustee, when we got the budget that morning, we were able to look through it beforehand. And then at the actual physical budget meeting, which is an open meeting, which was attended by the Board of Trustees and the department heads, we actually take the time to go through it page by page. So every person at this table went through the budget. Every person at this table had the opportunity to look line by line. There were questions that were asked. There was discussion that was held. So to say that none of the rest of the trustees looked at the budget, that's a false statement, number one. Number two, I can't speak for everybody at this table, but I can say that any questions that were brought up were answered at that time, or else we wouldn't have said, okay, the budget is okay to move forward with the posting and the notifications and things like that. So that's not to denounce what Trustee Burgess did. What that means is we all had the opportunity to look at the budget. I'm thankful that Trustee Burgess did that. I said before, what are we going to do about it though? Trustee Burgess has lots of comments and he has lots of pages of corrections. Great. We heard 2. And those 2 that he said, I personally addressed. So I don't want it to think that nobody else saw this budget. That's not what happened. If there were some errors, if there were some things we need to revisit, I remember being the most vocal trustee up here saying, let's fix it. What are we going to do about it? Let's see what's happening. So I don't want it to say that, nobody else looked at this budget. We all know the mayor took the opportunity, and that's his role, is to work with the department heads, to work with the finance director, and present to us a budget. He did that, we reviewed it. If changes need to be made, let's make them. But to go back and forth for an hour, where literally only 2 things were presented with no result in that to me was not conducive to a solution. That was my concern. That's my problem. And I do hope that I understand the timelines, and I understand that we have to go forward, but if there's some real concerns that haven't been brought to the table before, that haven't been brought to the finance director, so some of them could have been resolved beforehand, if there are still some valid concerns, they do need to be brought to the table with solutions. Because as it was presented to us during the budget meeting, this is it. This is all we have. We can't do anymore because there is no money. So if we have to grab money from somewhere else, I'm extremely curious to see where that's going to come from. Because if we're going to start adding money to other budgets, other line items, and it's going to be involved in cutting services of personnel, I can't speak for anybody else at this table, but I can tell you I will not vote for that. And I'll vote for people to lose their jobs. And that's the only way you can say, that's the only way you can cut a massive amount of your budget, is to lose personnel. That was my concern. But I don't hesitate, I don't think that it's a bad idea to have another meeting. But just because Trustee Burgess presented 13 pages that only he has seen, does not mean that none of the rest of the trustees looked at the budget. And I took offense with that.
Trustee Burgess?
Agenda are we on now? You on the committee? Are you going back to the budget? I just want to tell those that came out last Wednesday, thank you very much for the town hall. We will have another one August 13th. Hopefully the same place. I will be getting the information out as soon as possible. Again, I'd like to thank everybody that came out for that. And as I stated before, we won't have an intergovernmental relations meeting this month at all. We'll have one next month. But I'd still like to reiterate, those people that are filing their amendment for their property tax, cannot file until after September 5th. We will be having a meeting in August also for that reason. We're having a workshop. I'm going to have someone from the assessor's office out here to, so I'll let everyone know when to bring their tax bill. Even though you paid it, the amendment is for next year anyway. So, and the reason why it's coming out late is because they're going to reassess everybody's property. They're going county by county. They're doing it, and I think they're doing it township by township, the way I understand it. And right now, they're still behind, so that's why we have not got the time frame yet to file an appeal on your property tax. And from what I'm hearing, your property tax was inflated the last time. That's why your tax bill went up, and I think now it's going to go down. That's why you don't want to file an appeal until you find out how much they're going to cut first. But I will keep everyone informed of that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Costa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few things here. First of all, I'd like to apologize for last week having to cancel the baseball program, but the thunderstorms and the rain prevented us from going forward with that. And we have again this weekend will be a baseball camp at the baseball fields behind Wagner. Also, coming up this Friday, we have the movie at the community center. That will be the Lego movie. The backup movie will be Frozen again. The library has not received their shipment of the Lego movie, but I think I can get it anyway, so we're going to go with that. Next, we have the August 1st will be the next family night for games at the community center. That will be at 6 o'clock, so look forward to that. I want to let everybody know that the summer basketball program kicked off this last Saturday. We had our games on, 2 games on Saturday and 1 game on Sunday. The younger kids play on Sunday. It was a good time. It was good games. So we're going to come out and see those. Those games will be running every weekend now through the end of August. Also, we have the Thursday from 1 to 3 at the community center. We have the cardiac test coming up. If you haven't, there are flyers out in the lobby out there. If you haven't called in to reserve your spot, you can show up. It's from 1 to 3 o'clock at the community center on Thursday. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Trustee Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. First of all, I just want to say that, again, I want to thank all of my committee members for coming out tonight and for doing whatever it took to be able to be here for the presentations. And as you heard the mayor say, we're going to reschedule this particular presentation, and we do have your badges prepared to give to you all. I also want to announce that I'm happy to announce that the Neighborhood Watch meets every month on the second Monday of every month at the fire station at 6:30. And also, we have expanded, as I have been announcing, from just our regular Neighborhood Watch agenda to no texting while driving, as well as no bullying campaign pledges. And it's on the website for the School District 168, as well as for Bloom Township and Bloom Trail. And we have several students, as well as several residents at the parade that signed up and signed those pledges. So we're going to be displaying those participants' names in the Village Hall for approximately 30 days. They'll hang out there just in recognition that those people signed those pledges for our campaign, no texting while driving, and also no bullying. I just also want to say that, for clarification, Mayor, I just want to know that if we have committees or organizations that we participate in or that we implement outside the ones that's sanctioned by the village, that we can make announcements about those organizations here at the Village Hall and put our literature on the back table to be picked up by the residents. You want to answer that at the end when we keep going, or can you answer that part now?
Go ahead, come on.
Okay, because as you know, outside of being sanctioned with the Neighborhood Watch by the village, after the election, I started a committee and an organization in Sauk Village called Sauk Village for Informative Dialogue, which included a panel of residents that lived in the village that were answering questions asked by residents, and it was an open forum that we had right here at the community center. But I was specifically told I could not put any literature on the back table, and I could not announce it here at the Village Hall while we were giving our report of meetings. So I did talk to Pastor Burgess, to Trustee Burgess before last week about that, to let him know that I'm not definitely picking on you, trustee Burgess. But I just want a clarification that if any committee in the village, or if anybody in the village starts another outside organization or committee of residents, that they'll be able to come here and announce it and put the information on the back table or in the front foyer. That was one thing. And then I wanted to say about the budget hearing. It just appears to me that there's a lack of communication. I do remember when former Mayor Louis Campos was the mayor, during budget time, he was asking for trustees. I never missed a meeting to help with the budget, and nobody would help him with the budget. And I remember him saying, we're getting closer to the deadline, I need to get this budget done, and nobody still would help him. And then he came to a meeting and he said, I want to thank Trustee Hanks for coming and talking to me, and we sat down and we were able to finally cut and make cuts for the budget. And people had all kinds of questions that they wanted to ask former Mayor Towers, and he said, Trustee Hanks and myself sat down and made these cuts because this is the only way the budget could be passed. Now, if that was 2 years ago, I'm just asking you, Mayor Hanks, did you have a problem, or is it past practice that any trustee that feel that they can assist with what the mayor, whoever the mayor is doing, but coming up with the budget, can ask you, can they assist you, or something that you just wanted to do probably on your own with the department heads, or could any of us have asked to jump in? And I feel like if it's your area of expertise, even the more so you would want to do that so that we don't be pushed to this deadline where we'll have to have all of these penalties. And that concludes my report and statements.
Just a couple things, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'm too, with the rest of the trustees, curious in seeing the 13-page stuff that Trustee Burgess had. And good Lord, if you have something that can help us out, let's get it, let's look at it, let's do what we gotta do. If it's a betterment of this town, then let's do it. The other thing is, I am in favor of the young lady that spoke up, that asked for the police chief to answer her. Mr. Mayor, I encourage you to ask Chief Holowitz to answer her. She spoke to me briefly and her husband, and I think they deserve an answer from the police chief. And then the town hall meeting, I thought was great. There was some dynamite questions brought up, and there's some real concern, and there were some things that we can work on that make it. But once again, the residents brought it to our attention, and the trustees can act on it. I thought the town hall meeting was good. Thank you. That's all I have.
I'm going to think about placing material and stuff on the back. And I may have to reach out to the attorneys because, yeah, I'm not going to answer that question tonight. Okay, I'm going to give it some thought. I think we need to be very careful about what we start doing because it can get very close to campaigning. And we've learned over the years where you do one thing, it can be translated into something else and something else. And in the end, they can say, well, you let this trustee do this, so they can't do this here. So, I think I want to, next Tuesday when the attorneys are here, I'm going to ask them. And in the meantime, shoot you some information on exactly what you want to put out. If any of the trustees have any additional information that you want to put out on any of your ad hoc committees that are not recognized by the village, that's fine. Give it to me, and I will ask the attorneys next Tuesday night when they're here, so we get some time to think about it. But it comes time to the budget. As mayor, I look to the board for support. Again, I take the information that you provide. Again, I'm looking forward to seeing down trustee members. And it's something that we need to do and take a look at it again. No matter whenever we sit down, again, there's steps that have to be taken. Okay? We'll sit down with the finance director first. We'll look at the finances. We'll look at some of the things that he is suggesting. Then I sit down with the department heads and say the trustees suggesting we do this to your department. and they may have to make additional cuts. I'll go back to the department heads and say, where are you going to make the cuts? So, he mentioned $100,000 for overtime. I mean, if there's no funds available for $100,000, we'll be calling the chief then and saying, the trustee feels you need $100,000 more, what are you going to cut? And again, the whole entire budget process was working. Not everyone wants to say it's my budget. It's a budget that I present to the board from the mayor's office. But this budget was working with the department heads. Department heads provided what they wanted first. Then we had to look at what was coming in. Cuts were made, went back to the department heads, and they came back and said, you know what, you cut this, but I need it back in, but I don't need this. So what the board is looking at is something that the department heads had already approved. That's why the last budget hearing was so easy. If you sat in budget hearings before, they went on for over 8 hours. Because the department head would come back in and say, you know, I saw what you gave me, but I need this, this, and this, and this. And the board was sitting at a budget hearing trying to figure out where to get the funds at. You didn't hear that on June 30th. On June 30th, even when the trustee asked if the department head was okay with it, he said yes. Because there was an open relationship and a dialogue between the mayor's office and the department heads. So that when I came back to the board and presented it, it was something that the department head said they could live with. And it was going to be challenging and it was going to be tough. So tonight's conversation, yes, we spent over an hour talking about budgets, but you know, I think it's good. Everyone, I hear people all the time say, the trustees don't say anything. Well, not the trustees say a lot tonight. I think dialogue is good. That's why you have a committee meeting. That's why you have that brainstorming. That's why you have that dialogue between trustees. Because what it does is it might shake something in our noggin up here, say, oh yeah, and maybe think of something else that we can do a little different. So I've got no problem spending a little extra time here tonight talking about the budget. When it comes to the chief, I can find out exactly what the chief's not answering. I think we probably should talk, but again, the department heads are here on the second and fourth Tuesday. I try to make sure that they're here a little bit earlier, before the meeting, so residents can talk to them. The residents can hear their reports during a regular board meeting, and it also gives them, in case if there's not a major call, like last week, the fire chief had to leave because we had a major accident over at Baker's Tanks. But usually the department heads are here, so the residents can talk to them after the meeting also. So, again, I'll get you after the meeting, find out what the chief is not answering, and then let me see if I can push a little bit more, okay? And maybe I misunderstood exactly what you were looking for, so I do apologize if there was a misunderstanding there. A couple things I just want to make sure that I bring to your attention. Congresswoman Robin Kelly, she's hiring interns, so if you know anyone's in Washington or Illinois that's looking for an internship, she's looking for interns, fall internships. Deadline is July 25th. And spring internships, deadline is December 18th. Summer internships are April 11th. Illinois, looking for a district internship information. Application deadlines are fall, or August 16th. Spring is November 25th. Summer is April 11th. If you want additional information on the congressional internships, please call her office. And then I received this information for release. The Hispanic Heritage Organization is hosting their 24th annual Hispanic Heritage Essay Contest. Let's see here. This year's topic is on how can Latinos be more involved in the betterment of their community. Essays may be written in English or Spanish. The contest is open to all students in the state of Illinois from the grades of 4 through 12, as well as college and adult education students. There'll be 14 winners that will be selected. So yes, if I would read this tonight, so I want to make sure that I got that out to you. So with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn the committee meeting. A motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Motion adjourned. I would ask that we go back into the secretary of my paperwork. I'd ask for motion to reconvene the special meeting for the budget hearing. Your motion to reconvene. Motion, second.
Burgess. Horton. Myers. Poskett. Washington. Williams.
All right, and I think we'll go ahead and move to item number 3, public participation. Please state your name, and address for the record.
My name is Francine Anderson, and I live at 1606 216th Street. There's a couple of things I would like to emphasize in the beginning of my discussion before I go through your budget page by page, because I have taken the time to do that. So, first of all, I would like to know, Mr. Mohan, you got on the right, I hope so. Okay. You have voted and we have been given an increase of $2 in the water rates. So we are now paying $7.50, which was supposed to be for fixing our infrastructure. But I hear today that and I looked through your budget and we have a lot of grant money. Matter of fact, $585,000 that's been proposed to spend for fixing infrastructure. So I'm quite perplexed on why in the world am I paying $2 a month for increase on rates, and then also have budgeted this $585,000, which is $500,000. And I do that. I don't know about her, but I do. Also, sir, just before I go through, I also want to know, I've been through your budget, and I have found, this has to be wrong, but there's $4,739 in professional services and contracts. I would urge you not to pass this budget till you go back and look at some numbers, because I know that what I'm adding and what I'm seeing is not good for me as a resident. I don't know about anybody else, but I know Francine Anderson can't afford to pay $4,700,000 on professional services to anyone. Those are some great concerns. Just to start off my discussion, we can go to page 2. And I generally add it up, but under page 2, near the bottom where it says general infrastructure from the state of Illinois, you have budget $175,000. I understand you mentioned that earlier. I want to know how are you adding these numbers? You got the Parks and Recs grant here, and we're not even sure that you have the money. So why is it in this budget? Why are we adding numbers of something that we're not sure of? Also on that same page, it says Cops for Hire grant. That grant is done. How are we maintaining those positions that we hired? The 2 officers that were paid for out of that grant. Page 3. Your total general fund budget was an increase of $1.5 million. And you tell me you saved $5 million. Something, sir, is just not adding up. Page 4. Again, I just want to highlight, unprofessional services, we expended last year $550,000, $500,000 on the finance and administration for professional services. And you budget that amount again. Under contractual services, you say we expended $134,000, and then you did make a budget cut down to $50,000. Page 5. Under elected officials, where you have your committees. The Senior Citizen Committee expended $1,060 last year. And in this budget, you proposed 0. So how did they go from 1,000 to 0? I know that the senior committee have a lot of activities where they raise their own money. But I think if all the other committees have $150, $300, you could propose $1. Some for the senior committee. I'm on page 6 of your budget now. At the bottom, you have infra improvements, state again, $175,000. I think in your discussion earlier, you said we were getting $175,000. That's 2, and I'm just on page 6. Under Public Works and Safety on page 7. You have, under your actual, you say you spent $84,500. We're proposing $94 for vehicles. If I remember correctly, you got 2 new vehicles within the last 2 years. So are you planning to purchase vehicles with this, or is this to maintain vehicles? I had no questions on page 3. I'm on page 9 of your 27 pages. And I would like to look under the professional development piece. And this is ESTA. You talk about the 25-cent raise that they got per call. The year before, you budgeted $2,500. They used $1,156. And now we're proposing $1,700. I want to know if, since there is such a big emphasis in the U.S., and in Illinois, and everywhere, about being prepared and prepared readiness, how do ESTA plan to prepare our community for disasters or emergencies? Would that take up, publications alone would probably take up that fee. Not unless you do it under that 4-point-some million that we're doing for professional development. Again, you got another vehicle expense for ESTA, and it's $12,000. Are cars not being maintained? Because I see on average budget, we're averaging at least $12,000 to $15,000, $20,000 on maintaining vehicles under each budget. On number 10, page 10. Again, we go back to infrastructure again. It says infra improvement. You got $335,000 proposed and nothing previously used. Where's it coming from? I mean, we're spending money that we don't have. And I think if you're going to present a budget to us, the public, can it be, please be way more realistic than what I'm seeing? On page 11, under your total general fund expenditures, there's a difference of a difference under the total of $400,000. That's a $400,000 increase, not a decrease. It's very important to me how you expend our tax dollars. Page 12, I had no concerns. And then, of course, that was the fire revenues. Again, I come to page 13. We go back to vehicle expenses again. You got another $21,000. Why? Under the same fire fund expenditures, we have contractual services, $70,000. There is a difference in what I'm seeing under total contractual to total fire fund expenses of approximately $190,000. I'm just asking questions because I don't see it. I don't know where the money's coming from, but I see it proposed in this budget. And I didn't see where it's projections in the front part of your budget. Page 14. This is under the motor fuel revenues. Under professional services, I finally found a decrease. Last year you expended $69,000, and now you're only proposing to spend $60,000. On page 15. And I'm at the bottom. And it says net drug seizure funds. Is that revenue over expenses? Can you ask Mr. Mohan to answer my question before I give you my question? The abbreviations that you have here, does that mean net drug seizure fund revenue over expenses? Sorry. I'm at the bottom of the page of 15. Yes, no, I'm just trying to figure out. Is that what that means? I'm on page 15 at the bottom.
Go answer the question for me, but keep on asking.
Okay, then I'll just say my question because I didn't know how to phrase it. But then the question becomes, you budgeted $20,899 last year. You only spent $3,005. If it's revenue over expenses, then we had a positive of $3,545. But now you're budgeting for us to have $50,000. So how do you have such an extreme? If that's what it means, because I'm not sure. But that's a big jump. You go from $3,500 to $50, $50,000 in positive. If that's what it means. Page 16. I see you did add your DECO grant here. This DECO grant that is under the water fund, is that the same one that you were talking about that Mr. Austin, whatever the man's name was, that came from Springfield? Your lobbyist, is that this $75,000 here? On that same page 16, we have the IEPA loan. You have the $550,000 under the current, and then you have expended none of it. And I'm sure we have expended some of those dollars. But then you proposed only to spend $4,000. So what happened to the 100-some thousand that's not showing in the actuals? I'm on page 17. And it's water fund expenditures. Under professional services, last year you budgeted $70,000. You said you spent $115,000. And then this year we have 0 under proposed. Why? On that same page, under the water fund, you have other contractual services. Last year, you proposed $200,000. We spent $401,000. And then this year, you proposed $4 million. It ain't adding up. And I'm only looking from what I printed off the internet. This is the only thing I can ask questions from. This is what the budget shows. I'm on page 18. It says sewer fund revenues. We have transferred from the water fund $160,000. And I wanted to know why. And at the end of it, looking at your totals, last year we budgeted $543,000. You spent $583,000, but now you're proposing $750,000. Why $250,000 increase? To my understanding, we are a town that don't have any money. The sewer fund, my only question was that the sewer employee and the water employees, are they the same, and is part of a percentage of each of the employees' money's coming from each of the different funds, or is it a separate, now have we separated the water employees from the sewer employees? On page 20. You have transfers to the general fund, which you proposed $200,000, you spent $200,000, and you budgeted $200,000. That's the best balance I found in the whole budget. It was the same. It was congruent. It was consistent. I'm on page 21. I'm almost through your 27 pages. And page 21 is your CDBG fund revenues. Last year you budgeted $200,000. You said the actuals we used were $100,000. And then you went back to $200,000. So I wanted to know if this was, it says it's a grant. So did we not expend the money from the grant? The $100,000 that you said that we spent? And should that still be $100,000, or do we keep the same total from the beginning of the grant? So is it a 2-year grant, or was it a 1-year grant? Is it a 5-year grant? How are we spending the money? So my question is, what is the length of the grant? On the same page, under professional services, you budgeted $250,000, and you say we spent $4,750. But then you go back and you propose another $240,000. If you only spent less than 5,000, why are we proposing 240,000? I'm on page 22. It says TIF 2, Salt Point Fund revenues. Then it says property tax TIF districts. Last year you budget none, from what I'm seeing. But then you say we really actualized and spent 456,000. And then this year we proposed none. But if we spent 456,000, I don't even know. This stuff just ain't balancing out at all. And then also on that page, you have the other tips and the transfer to debt services. And it's all blank. Are we not paying debt services? Or you're not proposing it, or is it proposed in another area? And I missed it. Maybe I missed it. I'm on page 23. Again, I just want to highlight professional services, but this time on the positive. Because this, last year you said you spent, under the logistics center, $101,000. And you propose to spend none of it this time. You left it blank. So I don't know how we went from spending $101,000 to zero. I'm on page 24. Under professional services again. You proposed $70,000 last year's budget. You say you spent $44,988. So you make it 45. But then you go and you budget double that almost. You budgeted $75,000. So what's the $30,000 increase for? I'm on page 25. Under police pension fund revenues, it says gain/losses on investments. You proposed the /gain loss, $250,000 last year. You spent $192,000, and then we budgeted $190,000. I don't know if it's gains, loss, it says gain/loss. So my question is, which one is it? Was it a gain or was it a loss? Where is it projected? Sound like we're overspending an awful lot of money. Professional services, under that particular budget, you proposed $55,000, you spent $46,000, and then you came in and you proposed $50,000. Much better balance than some of the others. I'm on page 26 of your 27. I really need some help in understanding this. I am down under, it says fire police fund revenues again, and it's down under property tax working cash. You proposed $85,000, and here it says you actually spent $37,000, and now you're proposing $85,000 again. And the interest we earned was $3. That's what it said, right here. We earned $3. So we only earned $3, and you proposed $85,000, and you only used $37,000. Why would you propose $85,000? I don't know, for me, it's just not adding up. I'm on page 27. I'm sorry for this budget here. I want to know how to spend my money. Maybe you don't. I will, just the board man. But she also asked me, she said something. So I have to like answer the question she's talking about.
There's no discussion among the audience. It's to the board, it's to the mayor.
I asked her not to talk to me. She even laughed. Okay, page 27, sir. I'm near the bottom of your page. And it says principal interest for 2002 bonds. You proposed $954,000. But you say we spent, and we paid, actually paid, the $1,769,000. So, and there's nothing proposed for now. So is it that we are now done with that debt service and you could have removed it from your budget since there's nothing there? Or do we still owe on the 2002 bonds? Because there's nothing proposed here. So I want to know if it's paid off. Again, I started my statement with you're asking them to pay and approve this budget. If you look at any of the numbers that I presented to you today, there is no way that you can honestly say to the citizens of this town that you took time and really looked at these numbers. And if the trustees will approve something that gives $4,739 in professional services to anyone from out of this town, then you need to really be talking to the people that you call yourself representing, because you should not spend anyone's tax dollars in such nonsense. Thank you.
Well, Mohan, I'm going to try to answer this former trustee's questions, because you know a lot of these questions, but the professional services is not just attorney fees. I think you should be aware of this. And I think the residents should be aware of it. Professional services are everything from litigation, attorney fees, engineering fees, construction, our finance people that tell us, especially in our sessions like that, talk about the $4 million. The $4 million through this budget is talking about the $4 million you received through the IUPA. And again, a lot of the things you looked at, you talked about things that were on the revenue side. You talked about some of the pages that were on the expenditure side. There's a difference if you look at your budgets. One is estimated. When you think about a budget, especially for a municipality, we project, we estimate what we think is coming in. And Mohan's pretty good at figuring out the revenue coming in. You know, because we can look at based off what we had what we received last year, based off of what the increases were. He works closely with the comptroller's office and the state and the county to find out what's coming in. So that kind of gives us an idea how much money we're projecting that's going to come in. Just because it says in one area that we budgeted $85,000 and we only spent $37,000, I can tell you right now, $85,000 was not sitting in that budget line item. We budgeted to spend up to $85,000, but we only spent $37,000. So when you look at the budget, there's not $14 million or just over $14 million sitting in a bank account somewhere with every one of these line items. The village works off of the revenue coming in, the tax revenue coming in. Based off of what we project is going to come in, we put the line items together and say we can spend up to a certain amount inside these line items. Again, the $4 million, it's going to get spent because it's an IEPA loan. We don't have the money, but the work's being done. Everything gets sent to the village. The village presents it to the IEPA. The IEPA approves the the checks and stuff. So work is getting done. You talk about some of the things that we talked about on June 30th, and some of the things we talked about in village board meetings. The revenues coming in for Parks and Recs. You know, we have, tonight we found about, you know, of course the board's already knew about it, $135,000 for the parks, Carroll Park. We've already talked about the $200,000 that we're applying for through the grant for the parks and playgrounds, which is $235,000 that we're anticipating. In fact, it looks very positive. We've already gotten word from Springfield that everything it looks good. They've come back, they've asked for one more piece of the equipment, so one more piece of information, which we talked about earlier tonight with with our lobbyists. So $235,000 is coming into our parks and playgrounds, and the COPS grants for hire, we still continue to apply for those, and we have a great group of people over there when it comes to Tim Olinas and Becky Salisbury. We will continue to apply for COPS for hire. For some of the trustees sitting here, former trustees, they know exactly how it works, where we get grant, usually they pay for the first year, and they pay a certain percentage for some years after that, and then at the end, we pick up we pay from 100%. So the officers that we have, it's from the former cops for hire, they're still working for us, and we're still paying for them. They are already included inside the budget as part of payroll. When it comes to senior committee, you're right, it's a zero. When it comes to infrastructure and roads, $585,000. That's what we're estimating we're going to put back into our streets. When it comes to the CDGB grants, when it comes to $175,000 coming from the state, when it comes to other funds and stuff that we're anticipating coming into the village this next year through MFT funds. That's how much we plan on doing the roads. I think about $400,000 is what we're hoping for through CDGB. You talked about CDGB last year. We budgeted $200,000. However, we only got $100,000. So there's no extra $100,000 sitting out there. We applied for a $200,000 grant last year. We got $100,000. That's why $100,000 was spent. So when you look at stuff like that, we could go through page after page. Some of that I marked up because I thought it was kind of interesting. You talked about as $12,000. If you would have looked, it wasn't as the street department, and that claims for gas and a lot of these things. And you talked about the vehicle expense for each department. A lot is for gas for our vehicles. So streets is estimated $12,000, and some of the other ones you talked about. The Parks and Rec, we already talked about $335,000. As we get the grant money, that money will go into our parks and stuff and things that we've already applied for. And we're looking at doing improvements, expansions. Parks and Recs this last year, under the leadership of Trustee Hoskin, has added more events and things than in years past. I think about, when I see him, I think about Mary Siri, how active she was. He's doing the same thing, getting these things out there for the kids. We're always going to get larger and larger. We've got that. You talk about the general fund expenditures. Based off the expenditures that we pay through the general fund is based off of what we project is coming in. Again, you talk about right around $400,000. I think it's pretty good, especially in the fact that through our union negotiations, you know, some things we've talked about, and there's some people sitting here that haven't attended the meetings. Under the previous administration, there was no union negotiations that was done. We have already approved 3 contracts? 3 contracts from our unions that the previous administration wouldn't even deal with them. We've got one more to go, and once we get done with that, we'll be all caught up. When you think about the amount of $400,000 that we've increased, we had to go back and get union negotiations, or have negotiations with our unions, we had to get contracts signed, and as a village, we have to go back and give them all retro pay. So we're going back and paying because the previous administration wouldn't work with the unions. They were trying to get rid of the unions. So we're trying to work with our unions. And again, trying to do it on the best interests of the village and trying to make it where we can afford it. So we worked well with it. Again, vehicle expense on the fire fund, that's gas. And go on, catch me if I miss anything. You talked about...
Excuse me, sir, I don't know what page you're on because you're just talking, but I can't follow you.
Well...
So I can send my other questions in writing.
So, and then the The increase in the drug enforcement fund, this last year, we just put a police officer on the South Suburban Gang Task Force. It's on page 15, down south.
Thank you.
So we're anticipating $50,000, and that's on the low end. We're very conservative. The South Suburban Gang Task Force has done very well. In fact, the chief thinks that they just had a major bust, and he thinks that, I just talked to him the other day, he thinks we're probably going to bring in over $50,000 just on this first bust that they had. So they are really doing well. And again, it was something that we applied for after I first became acting mayor. We had applied to Cook County, and our officer just got approved. He went through all the training, the testing, and he's now on there. So what does it do for Sauk Village? It also brings us additional resources into Sauk Village, because now that he's on that task force, we can use that task force to come into Sauk Village when we start addressing some of the areas that we're having problems. Also, just as he goes and helps in other communities, whenever there's a major drug bust or there's things that are caught, that gets split up between the communities that are involved in that. They also pay for the officer's overtime that's working, especially on the special details. For the task force, he gets a car, which was he was provided with a car. So there's a lot of things that help Sauk Village. You go to page number 16, you talk about the $75,000. That is the DEPA grant that we were talking about tonight with our lobbyists, page number 17. Again, $4 million IEPA loan. Again, we're spending that in the water department. That is where the money is going when it comes to professional services. We moved our professional services around. Again, looking at a way to pull money out of the water and sewer funds to pay for those through the general fund. We're paying for that through the general fund now. So again, paying for that. Again, moving those areas around. Page number 18. We talk about the $160,000. Again, that goes into general fund expenses, right? Mohan? The I just want to show transfer from water fund $160,000. That's for general fund expenditures and expenses, right? Page number 19. You talk about how our employees paid. They're not separated. We have water, public works, and streets. We have them split up into these departments where we know that the revenue is coming in for these departments. We try to make sure that the funds are available for those individuals. But we have a staff of what, 9 now? Is it 7 or 9? I always get that mixed up. 7. We have 7 employees between the Public Works, Water Department, and Public Works, Water Department, and Streets. We have 7 employees. Those 7 employees are all pretty much cross-trained. They all work in everywhere. So you'll see those employees are the same employees that are out there fixing water main breaks, they're the same employees that are out there plowing the streets, same employees that are chipping wood, same ones that are out there mowing grass. We have a couple that are dedicated for our water side. They have all the special licenses and things that you need to keep our water system up. But when they're not doing that, they're out there, they're working also. So 7 employees for our whole entire community. So it kind of gives you an idea. The, again, transfer general fund of $200,000, utility fund expenditures, that's for general fund, yeah. We already talked about where did the $100,000 go. We only received $100,000. We were hoping to get $200,000 through CDGB, but we only received $100,000. You talk about the CN noise fund. That was revenue that the CN gave us to set up a noise fund, and you asked about, last year we spent $4,700, and this year we're anticipating $240,000, because we have to be able to leave that money so we can spend it. So if something happens, we still have $240,000 that falls within that CN railroad for that noise reduction fund in that area. So again, we've already got the delineators there on Torrance Avenue, or both now Torrance and Cottage Grove, so the horns won't be honking when the trains go by. CN, when they put that project in place, they gave Sauk Village $250,000, $300,000, and that was how many years ago? About 4 years ago. So of the $300,000, there's still $240,000 left in that fund. You talk about property taxes. Let's see here, for the TIFs, We didn't do anything because yeah, so everything's been abated already, so there's nothing that's being paid out this year because of the abatements. So you asked about what we spent last year and what we're spending this year. We're not spending anything because it's already been abated. Again, professional services, that's everything, and a lot of people think professional services are just attorneys. It's not just attorneys. We've got a whole list of professional services that deal with our village. And I already named a whole bunch of them. Engineers, attorneys, construction, finance, so it goes right down the list. Again, professional services on 24. You talk about the police and pension fund on page number 25. Again, this is something the police pension board should be doing themselves, but we've helped them out. Based off what they provided, we put the numbers in there for them. This is there. The police pension board, as you know, is separate from the village. So we got the numbers that they gave us. Again, we throw it in the budget. So if you have a problem with how much they're spending for whatever, I think that's a question for police and fire pension board. Let's see here. Page number 27 talks about the 2002 bonds. Where are you at, on? 2002 bonds. We didn't put anything in there this year because why? We didn't put anything in there this year because of the 2002 bonds. What was the reason again? You look that up. It's on page 27. So last page. But again, a lot of your questions were repetitive for each department. So that's where we're at there. 2002 bonds, you remember?
Mr. Mayor, in your explanation, you just explained that $4 million from the EPA in 4 different ways. Can you please clear that up for the public? Because I'm definitely interested in hearing. And this is the public meeting, so I'm not, is it to your 2 minutes or 4 minutes, whichever one. But you just explained that $4 million in 4 different ways. So where is the $4 million?
The village, again, it's hard to picture this. The village received $4.8 million from the IEPA, but we don't have that $4.8 million. The IEPA has that $4.8 million. As work is getting done, we have to present the bills to the IEPA, and the IEPA issues the checks. So that's where the funds, when we put inside the budget, the work that's being done. If you looked at the consent order through the IEPA, through the Attorney General, there was a breakdown of how much money was being spent from that $4.8 million. So much went for engineering services, so much went for construction, so much went for the equipment that we were receiving. So as that stuff gets brought in, that's pretty much what it is. And when you look at, you're right, it's in a couple places. Because one is estimated revenue, because we're going to end up paying it out, and the other part is expenditures when you pay it out. So, again, that's why you'll see it under revenue, you'll see it under expenditures. So, and it's not
Can you
something
put that on the website, because I'm really not understanding, because you have said it again, and I don't know how you added $4 million 4 times, and then now you're telling me it's 2 times. So, I mean, please put the explanation on the website so we all understand that it's only $4 million. And it's only should show once under expenditure and should show once under revenue. But instead, you're still saying that it's the same $4 million 4 times. Something is just not, I mean, that's in your explanation. I'm just listening. I'm sorry.
Any other questions?
I don't know why nobody else don't have none, but I sure know 1 + 1 is 2.
All right. Anything else? Ask for motion to adjourn. Okay. Motion for a second. All in favor, say aye.
All right.